In North Kingdom, a huge tree holds a sacred secret. This goddess's tree stands tall near the palace shrine. Embedded within it lies the legendary holy sword. Long ago, the goddess foretold a hero would pull it to defeat the demon lord. But now it's just a festival sideshow. Yet suddenly a maid, of all people, unbelievably yanks out the sword. Suddenly handsome heroes get involved somehow. It's a hilarious comedy avoiding any romance. After that crazy bell ringing, the young woman peers out, looking totally surprised by something. The legendary blade glows brightly, finally freed from its ancient resting place. This legendary sword was impossible to pull out, yet she just held it. Eleanor Twain, a palace maid, sat panicking, wondering what on earth to do. Yep, just your average lady's maid from the Kleinorth Royal Palace. Being a maid means cleaning places like the rarely visited shrine garden, you know. Getting in trouble again. The poor maid is ordered to sweep the shrine forest as punishment. While sweeping the ridiculously clean forest, the maid's gaze drifted upwards to something shiny. She sighed, looking at the old goddess's tree and thinking how pointless this cleaning punishment really was. Her eyes fixed on the object high up. The young woman musing aloud if it was made from metal, peering closer at the legendary blade stuck in the tree. She wondered practically if it would start rusting from the rain. Shrugging off deeper thoughts, the maid simply decided that dusty thing needed a quick wipe down. Reaching up, the maid's gloved hand nears the dusty sword hilt stuck fast in the tree. Her eyes widen in utter disbelief. Surely this couldn't be happening. And just like that, the ancient blade slips right out effortlessly. Whoops! The sudden lack of resistance sends the surprised woman tumbling backwards onto the grass. Immediately, the kingdom's massive bells begin to ring out, loud and clear. The legendary blade, now free, looked surprisingly clean. Guess it wasn't rusty after all, just really stuck. Holding the sword, the shocked young woman gasped, realizing this ridiculous situation might mean she was the fabled hero. After all, the legend of the hero and the holy sword had been nothing but an old bedtime story for ages. Every young guy grew up hearing it, dreaming of pulling it out himself and becoming the destined hero one day. Meanwhile, the loud ringing bells echoed across the entire town, signaling the unexpected news had broken wide open. While guys dreamt of pulling the sword, girls also dreamt, hearts fluttering, about the hero. But the actual hero, the maid, just held the sword, wondering what being a hero even meant. Suddenly, shouts of "Cheers to the hero!" erupted from the crowd, the air buzzing with excitement. And there was Eleanor, standing on a platform, realizing the hero goes on a journey to beat the demon lord. The young woman gripped the sword, her face a mix of worry and resolve for the adventure ahead. Her face goes totally pale with shock. This whole hero thing is absolutely impossible, she thinks. The sudden reality hits her hard. She can't abandon her sick brother. And is a demon lord even real anyway? Clutching her arm, the distressed maid tearfully wishes she could just pretend none of this ever happened and doesn't want to go. Looking down at the legendary blade in her hand, the young woman considers her predicament. Eyes wide with worry, the hero in training eyes the sword again. A silent moment of heavy consideration settling over her face. Pulling the holy sword was a definite mistake. The reluctant hero stands by the tree, sword in hand. Good grief, the ancient tree wanted the sword to stay. Holding a tray, the maid sighs, thinking even the sword is annoyed being pulled by her. With a hopeful but resigned look, she wished her brother could pull it, restoring family honor, though it was impossible. Eleanor desperately tries shoving the stupid legendary sword back into the tree trunk it came from. Her real dream, obviously, is just becoming a super awesome maid, not some hero. Eyes wide with worry, the young woman thinks this was supposed to be a calm, normal world. Still trying to force the sword back in near the tree, she awkwardly avoids the gathering crowd's attention. Walking away, the maid finally lets out a quiet, phew, relieved to have escaped the ridiculous scene for now. Maid desperately shoves the sword back. "Don't ever come out," she tells it. "Busted." A handsome guy just saw her. He looks totally confused as she tries to ditch the cursed weapon she pulled out. The air gets super thick with awkward silence stretching between them. Eleanor tried shoving the dumb sword back into the tree trunk, humming like everything was fine. His mind just got absolutely blown by what he'd witnessed her doing. The maid whipped around, dropping her cleaning tools, begging him desperately to wait. It was way easier cleaning this deserted shrine garden than dealing with this hero mess, she'd thought happily earlier. But he wasn't waiting, grabbing her hand to report this nonsense immediately before heading home. He grabbed her arm, demanding why she hadn't waited, sending the poor maid into a total panic. This was so bad, she thought, agonizingly wondering why this specific stubborn guy had to see her. The young man was indeed Prince Blair, the kingdom's second prince. Now looking sternly at her, still held, the maid frantically insisted she absolutely did not pull the sword, while he insisted he saw it happen. "Look at my slender arm," she argued desperately, claiming she couldn't possibly have. But the prince wasn't buying her flimsy excuse. Prince Blair totally isn't buying her slender arm excuse for pulling the sword, thinking her claim is utterly unbelievable, perhaps calling her a needlefish internally. He argued that he himself couldn't pull the legendary weapon out no matter how many times he attempted it, suggesting it's not just about brute strength. She hints there might be more to pulling it than that. The prince falls silent, processing her unexpected point and the weird implications. Finally giving up her flimsy denial, the resigned maid lets out a sigh and agrees. The maid's terrified expression said it all as the prince insisted she prove she could pull it again. Panicked, Eleanor wondered what on earth she was supposed to do now with him watching. Pointing at the sword in the tree, the young man demanded she try again, stunning her into disbelief. Clinging to her sleeve, the worried woman desperately hoped the goddess had just been clumsy the first time. This was awful. She realized with dread that she could definitely pull the stupid legendary sword out again. Prince Blair sternly tells the maid she absolutely has to pull the sword again. She looks like she's about to cry. Gritting her teeth, the young woman strains with all her might, insisting it's impossible to pull the stupid thing out this time. Still grunting and pulling from behind, she huffs desperately, while the prince watches her peculiar struggle curiously. Suddenly, he resorts to dirty tactics, tickling her mercilessly from behind, causing her to shriek in surprise. With a slip, the sword comes loose and she cries out that he's a coward for aiming his attack there. She screams that attacking a girl's side like that is cowardly. The legendary blade flies upwards and lodges back into the tree trunk. The maid lands with a confused gasp, blinking her eyes open after the sudden fall. Staring at the sky, she realizes pulling the holy sword happened again. But surprisingly, it didn't hurt this time. Both the young woman and the prince are sprawled on the ground, absolutely stunned that the sword actually came out again. Sitting on the poor guy, she totally panics about being fired and unemployed for this incredible social blunder. Still perched on him, the young woman repeats her panicked thoughts about sitting on a prince while he just tells her to move. The embarrassed student hunches over, clutching herself in distress, while he lets out a groan from underneath. He finally scrambles up, shouting for her to move, causing the startled maid to flinch violently backward. Just as she recoils, the prince grabs her wrist tightly, keeping her from escaping this awkward mess. The young man held her wrist, looking totally caught off guard by her reaction. His expression remained steady, eyes fixed on her while he kept his grip tight. Meanwhile, the maid's face flushed bright red, her heart pounding like crazy in her chest. Still holding hands, the embarrassed student stumbled over her words, addressing him formally amidst the awkward silence. Suddenly, she projectile spat something right into his face, prompting him to ask her name despite the chaos. The maid was utterly shocked, spluttering about "hero?" while gripping his arm in disbelief. Looking at her intently, The young man stated plainly that she'd pulled the holy sword, wondering why she seemed so surprised. Clutching the legendary blade, the distressed woman mumbled about the goddess. Learning this meant she was officially approved as the hero. She stared wide-eyed as he insisted he must report this bizarre truth to His Majesty, still holding on to her arm. A wave of total shock washed over her as something announced her hero status and demanded her name. The prince insisted she had to come with him, but she adamantly refused. Apologizing frantically, the distressed maid insisted it was absolutely impossible, while he just stayed silent. He questioned why she'd refused such an honor, and the reluctant woman replied he'd totally get it if he just saw. The young woman confessed she wasn't hero material, just a regular royal's lady's maid after all. Blair stated firmly that decision wasn't hers to make. The goddess had already decided that. The maid argues, who would possibly believe a delicate woman like her pulled out the holy sword? She thinks the prince is totally stubborn but won't obey him right now. She adds that people will surely make a huge fuss talking thoughtlessly, since even strong knights couldn't pull it out. The young man looks utterly confused by this reasoning. Closing her eyes, she concludes that her pulling it absolutely sounds like a lie to anyone who hears it. He just stares, processing her bizarre logic. The young man looks taken aback, asking if she's really suggesting his own royal testimony wouldn't be accepted by the public. Raising her voice, the embarrassed student insists this whole maid hero thing isn't actually what the people want anyway, surprising him further. She acknowledged his popularity with the people, but quickly added that wasn't the point she was trying to make. Arguing her case, the young woman insisted her arms were weak. Her only strength was talking. And who wants a hero like that anyway? Leaning in intensely, she urged him to be honest. Guessing he had to be thinking, how could this maid be the hero? The prince immediately bristled, shouting back that it absolutely was not like that at all, looking totally offended. Reaching out, the young man grabbed her face, telling her to fix her expression because a royal maid shouldn't look that desperate. Yelling she wasn't a hero, the panicked woman couldn't fathom why the real hero would reject such an honor. She insists she simply isn't worthy, which is why she's got a mountain of concerns right now. Honor won't fill her stomach, she points out, adding that the hero job sounds temporary anyway, leaving her unemployed. Explaining she'd worked incredibly hard, finally passing her senior royal maid exam, utterly shocked the poor guy. Even the typically stern head maid cried a little, expressing pride and telling Eleanor not to lose her devotion from now on. Even though the head maid cried with pride, she knows a strict punishment is coming for all this mess. Clutching the prince's cloak, she desperately explains how she must keep her job for her sick brother and insists he would be the better hero anyway. He flatly refuses her attempt to hand over the legendary sword, looking utterly shocked by her actions. Annoyed, the young woman thinks, "Tch," stubbornly deciding she absolutely won't deceive the people about who pulled the sword. Still wrestling over the situation, she reminds him being a hero is about helping people, wondering why he's so against it. She totally loses it, swinging the holy sword and yelling at the prince to chill, warning him not to break it as he's awkwardly stuck behind it. The maid then tries to make a break for it with the stupid thing, muttering that the kingdom was doing just fine without it while he yells for her to wait. But nope, she just runs back to the tree and jams the sword hilt first right back into it, declaring it a perfect fit. The young man just stares, his jaw practically on the ground, in absolute shock at her incredible, baffling feat. And wouldn't you know it, the tree trunk visibly shifts and closes up around the legendary weapon, swallowing it back inside completely. The maid happily declares the sword is back in, looking smug after her stunt, while the young man is absolutely stunned, speechless. Grabbing her arm, the prince totally lost it, yelling something about why she did that crazy thing. He clutches himself, sweat beading on his forehead, letting out a shaky gasp as the reality of what just happened sinks in. Shaking visibly, the stunned young man slumped to the ground near the tree, completely unable to process what he just witnessed. Staring wide-eyed, the poor guy could only stammer out confused questions about what on earth was happening here. The prince collapses near the tree, overwhelmed by an evil presence, his body refusing to listen. Suddenly, the worried maid calls out, asking him what's wrong as he clutches himself. Her face fills with concern, seeing his distress and wondering what could be bothering him so much. He weakly asks if she feels anything, noting how pale he is, while she looks back confused. A gasp escapes her lips as the implication dawns. Why isn't she affected by whatever this is? The young woman thought, seeing his distress. Maybe this was a golden opportunity to make her escape. Seeing the prince unwell, the maid dutifully offered to fetch the royal family doctor right away. She started backing away, cleaning tools in hand, as he looked up, suspecting what she might be planning. Insisting his condition looked serious, the young woman declared she'd call a doctor immediately and told him to wait right there. But the desperate prince reached out, weakly pleading with her to stop, his eyes full of urgency. The young man crumpled to the ground, clutching his head, overcome by the evil presence near the tree. Clutching her broom, she hurried up the hill, calling back desperately for him to stay put until the doctor arrived. His eyes wide with a sudden, terrifying realization, the prince reached out a hand, perhaps trying to warn her. Spinning around in a total rage, the maid screamed that for the last time she wasn't a hero, snapping her broom in half. He sighed, smirking slightly, noting she'd broken her broom and asking why she seemed to dislike it so intensely now. Clutching himself by the tree, sudden relief washed over the young man. He realized the oppressive atmosphere had completely returned to normal. Standing up, the prince wondered what the heck that presence had been. Still processing the bizarre event, his expression turned serious. Back inside the tree, the legendary sword rested innocently. Job done. Prince Blair stands by the tree. He reaches into the trunk. The tree hides the sword. The young man looks thoughtfully at the tree trunk, utterly confused by what he'd seen. Trying to grasp the legendary blade again, he sighs, confirming he still cannot pull the stubborn thing free, just like before. The prince sensed a weird energy vanish. The maid got away, wondering about the strange young man. A younger brother called another best for the sword. Meanwhile, several princes gathered at the tree. The hero legend was a serious ambition for them. One prince calmly told Blair that the goddess chose the hero based on worthiness, not status. A prince and his brother discussed the 1,000-year wait. Sure, no ordinary person fit the hero bill, completely missing someone right below them. Klaus stepped up, shouting he'd become the hero right now, urged on by the other prince. But no matter how hard he pulled, the legendary sword refused to budge, earning quiet chuckles hidden by the foliage. The guy crumpled down, praying for divine favor, as the others thought about their family squabble and the need for a hero. That blonde prince smiled confidently, reiterating his point that the hero chosen after a millennium definitely wouldn't be just some average Joe. She absolutely insisted she didn't pull it, begging him repeatedly to just overlook this mess, then worried, asking why he looked so pale. But now, the alleged hero was being hauled like luggage, sparking thoughts about just what kind of creature this hero actually was as they started Chapter 2. Hidden under a cloth, the poor woman just mumbled about how tired she was, utterly exhausted by everything. The legendary sword was pulled, totally unexpected. But Prince Blair saw her pull the darn thing. Things got awkward. She fought being the hero. She got punished, broke her broom, the prince got sick, and she bolted for a doctor hoping he'd forget. He still wanted her name, the hero, but she totally kept him guessing. Hooded and hoping to blend in, the maid snuck through the streets, agonizing about touching the stupid sword, and the prince probably finding her. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her from behind, a voice cheerfully announcing, "Hey, glad you could make it, Eleanor." He pulled back the hood of her clearly terrible disguise, asking why on earth she was wearing such a thing. The person tugged the hood further, commenting on the miserable look plastered across her face. Holding the flimsy hood, he questioned why her disguise was so easily exposed, while the young woman meekly insisted she was trying to hide. Reed Montauk, her friend from the neighborhood grocery, looked totally confused, asking why she needed a disguise anyway. The young woman pouted, admitting the hiding was useless, but she just couldn't help it. While he teased nobody would marry her frowning like that. Looking sadly down, she sighed that marriage wasn't even an option in this life, then changed the subject, asking about Bradley. The young man looked thoughtful, remembering how he and his mother took care of her sick brother whenever she worked at the palace. Handing her a paper, he noted Brad would be surprised by her appearance and gave her today's memo. Thinking of her brother, she just hoped he wasn't worrying too much about everything. The friend mentioned her brother hadn't eaten dinner, sending her into a worried shock. He added the boy seemed okay now, but had a weird turn this afternoon, slightly concerning them. Reassuring her not to worry, the young man gently patted her head as she expressed relief and thanks. Feeling grateful and a little embarrassed, she promised to pay the doctor later while he asked her to thank his auntie. He kindly tells her not to worry about them helping her brother, saying they did it willingly, while she asks if she can see Brad first. Thanking her friend profusely, she hears him add that she can pay the doctor's fee anytime she is able. As she turns to leave, the young man gently stops her, prompting her to pause and realize something. He then gives her a basket, explaining he recreated a dish her brother loves and made sure to include some for her as well. A warm feeling washes over the maid as she looks away, a soft, grateful smile gracing her face. He watched her, a complicated mix of feelings swirling behind his eyes. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Eleanor threw her arms around him, thanking her friend sincerely, insisting she'd pay him back for the ingredients. She totally ignored Reed's exasperated protests about not being kids anymore. She waved goodbye with a big smile, leaving the young man looking awkward and slightly bewildered. After she'd gone, the kind young man let out a quiet sigh, a soft smile playing on his lips. The clouds drifted lazily across the sky as she hurried back towards home. She checked her reflection, telling herself her clothes and hair looked perfectly fine. Arriving at her modest house, the young woman paused at the door. Slapping her cheeks, she told herself, "All right, gotta get rid of this tired face before going in." She carefully pushed the door open, peeking inside the room. Inside, the room was quiet and still, waiting. Peeking inside, the young woman looked surprised, wondering why it was dark. A small lamp glowed on the table, making her wonder why her friend always turned it on. But wait, her eyes widened as she realized the lamp was actually lit after all. Looking around, she was totally baffled. The lamp was on, yet the room felt eerily dim. What was happening? The young woman's eyes widened in alarm as she softly called out her brother's name. Her hand tentatively reached for the doorknob, hesitation mixing with urgency. Clutching a lamp, the panicked maid searched the dim room, her voice trembling as she called for Brad. An unsettling silence hung heavy in the air, colder than it should be. A creeping sense of dread settled over the house. The unsettling cold deepened. A darkness settled heavily. Time to face the music. Her brother turned, his smile unsettling, offering an eerie, "Welcome home." The maid stared, utterly shocked by the strange greeting from the young man. Startled, the maid looks up as the room abruptly brightens, while her brother calmly asks what's wrong. Still unsettled, she asks the young man if he didn't think things felt really weird just now. Observing her brother closely, the young woman notes he looks pale, yet strangely, doesn't seem like he's in any pain. The young man just responds with an unsettling smile, casually asking if it was weird, adding to the strange atmosphere. Shaking off the odd feeling, she tries to focus on his health, asking Brad how he is and why he skipped dinner. Taking his hands, the worried maid gasped. Why were his hands freezing cold? He just looked back with that calm smile, saying he was perfectly okay. But then he flipped the script, asking if her hands weren't actually too warm. The young woman looked absolutely stunned by his question, totally disbelieving it. He just offered another unnerving smile, a little giggle escaping him. The young man clasped his sister's hands, insisting he was truly fine and she shouldn't fret about him. Meanwhile, the maid looked towards the window, feeling surprisingly good about the day despite everything. Yet a strange, unsettling smile played on the young man's face as he sat there. Her worry returned as she pondered the unusual behavior from Brad, feeling confused. His pale complexion and unsettling grin remained unchanged, a truly bizarre and unnerving sight. But that kind and warm smile he usually had. Tonight, the young man's smile is different, unsettlingly so. Kinda. Seeing this, the worried sister asks if he feels weird, only for him to ask her the same back. Peering closer at the strange boy, she murmurs his name, a knot of dread forming. Then, with that unnerving grin, he calmly assures her, "Don't worry, I won't do anything to you, big sis." The young man looks down, asking his sister what exactly she means by things feeling weird. He explains that it's because she pulled out the holy sword, revealing he knows about her secret. The poor woman is utterly shocked, letting out a confused, "Eh," as her brother adds he too. Staring at him, the worried sister asks how on earth he knows about the holy sword. With that chilling smile, the young man states that he has also awakened to something dark. The poor woman's eyes widened in total shock, asking inwardly, "Awakened?" Her brother's words were seriously weird. Pointing with a nervous sweat drop, she looked utterly freaked out by what the young man had just confessed about himself. The young man simply held something in his hand, his back turned, appearing completely calm despite her panic. Trying desperately to switch topics, the worried sister spotted the basket and asked if that was the food Reed had made earlier. The basket just sat there, and her brother's hesitant, "Eh? Ah, yes." Response about the food felt utterly off. The young man confirmed the food basket was for both of them and came from Reed's aunt, still smiling that unsettling smile. His sister looked worried, while he added it would be sad if Reed's effort went to waste because the food got cold. Giving in, the worried sister agreed that maybe eating it now was the right thing to do. The basket held a pot of delicious-looking stew and bread. Somebody decided to grab a container. Her brother suddenly tried to get up, insisting he felt good, but the panicked sister ordered him to rest instead. The worried sister insists he explain why before doing anything drastic, while he looks confused. Ugh, whatever. She tells him to rest up, insisting she'll handle it herself. Looking genuinely sorry, the young man apologizes for being unable to help her when she's so tired. Her face softens into a gentle smile, touched by his apology. "Just sit there and wait," the maid insists cheerfully, telling him not to move while she handles things. She turned to prepare the food, but the young man suddenly mentioned the lamp again. Just then, he had a violent reaction, sending objects crashing loudly around the room. Everything came tumbling down, landing around the poor woman as she cried out from the pain. Yet through the chaos, her brother remained eerily calm, still wearing that unsettling smile. He mused silently that he wouldn't have to worry about his big sister anymore, though other troubles might find her. Broken stuff everywhere. Spoon, plate. The maid panicked. Should she call the doctor? Again? What to do? Holding a bowl, the young woman told herself to calm down. Her eyes adjusted now, and she had to hear her brother's story first. How did he know about the sword? Her eyes wide with fear, she reminded herself that calmness was the best strategy now. Putting on a smile, the embarrassed student agreed. Yes, of course. They should totally have a small talk first. The young man on the bed welcomed his sister back, asking if she was fine without the lamp. He thought he just needed to ask calmly, as usual. Trying to make small talk, she confessed she got scolded by the head maid again today. Her brother stared, asking if she really got yelled at again, while she laughed awkwardly, saying it was harsher than usual. She sighed, admitting it was a bad job because she broke things, and he worried she might get hurt again. While stirring the stew, the embarrassed student thought gratefully how glad she was that this was the usual Brad. Then she cheerfully revealed she had met the second prince today, which seemed to utterly surprise him. She explained to her brother that everyone said Prince Blair was scary, so she wondered what cruel person he was. Her thought continued that he actually looked pretty cute, staring at her with amazement. Recalling the bizarre encounter, the prince looked utterly flustered and shocked. Still processing, the bewildered guy felt like everything that happened must have been a dream. Looking thoughtful, the maid mused that someone like him was far from her reach. Bringing the food, the young woman complained how weird it was for the prince to suddenly tickle a girl's side, while her brother just confusedly asked which side. She insisted it was indeed rude, highlighting how that side was puffy, adding to the awkwardness. The young man just stared, processing her strange description with sweat beading on his forehead, murmuring, trying to awkwardly salvage the conversation. The maid suggested they just eat, but he was still stuck on her Before they could eat, terrifying monstrous figures suddenly attacked, one drawing blood and causing her to cry out. One attacker revealed himself, a menacing, dog-like creature. She shrieked in sheer terror, staring back as two strange figures, the dog thing and another, invaded her space. And the second figure looked like a cat, wearing a hat. Utterly baffling her, the creatures suddenly appeared inside the house, kneeling deeply near her brother's bed. What was even happening? Now sitting humbly by the young man's side, the two bizarre beings seemed to be paying respects to him directly. The maid's eyes bulge. Did the creatures just say her brother Bradley is a king? Her brother just smiles back, while she repeats his name in disbelief, completely stunned by the title he was given. Utterly shocked, the young woman stares at her brother and the kneeling creatures, trying to process this insane revelation about him. What is happening? I can't believe this, she thinks, completely overwhelmed as the strange events of Chapter 3 unfold. These aren't human, she realizes, staring at the bizarre dog and cat figures, wondering just what they are and why her quiet house is suddenly full. The weird dog and cat creatures kneel by the bed, while the young man calmly sits there, his sister watching in disbelief. She is utterly speechless, her hand clutching her chest in pure shock at the bizarre scene unfolding. The strange beings, the dog-like one and the cat in a hat, look intensely serious as they kneel there. One of the creatures, the cat, gives a definite, unsettling smirk, adding to the creepy vibe. The reality hits her hard. She shudders, terrified by these non-human things and what they said about her brother. Her eye widened, staring intensely, realizing the horrifying truth of the bizarre revelation. The panicked woman cried out, demanding what they wanted from her brother and how they even got inside the house. Meanwhile, the young man turned back, calling out, "Big sis!" with a look of growing concern. The dog creature snarled fiercely, barking that nobody should dare stand before their king. Standing tall and imposing in his weird suit, the creature loomed over her, simply stating, "Hey, woman." The worried sister is totally freaking out, shouting he's just her brother, definitely not a king. Her arm tensed defensively, ready for whatever was coming next. The menacing dog creature snarls, ordering her to get out of the way. Yelling protectively, the worried sister screams at the creatures about her brother's health, demanding they keep their distance. The tall one explains her brother is weak against animal fur, telling her pointedly not to come any closer. Furious, the maid yelled about the creature's attitude, while the cat thing coolly thought she looked weak and the dog prepared for something. The worried brother tried to calm her down, but she insisted she was totally fine, and even the head maid praised her legendary dustpan skills. She turned to her brother, reassuring him fiercely not to worry, because she would quickly drive those weirdos away. His face remained unsettlingly calm, giving a strange, quiet smile. With a worried but determined look, she heard him say it was all right, and she didn't have to worry about anything. She checked on her brother, still shocked, asking with a gasp, "Hey, is it okay?" His expression suddenly turned intensely serious. Gone was the unsettling smile. The tall dog-like creature addressed someone with a direct, "You guys," his companion standing stoically. With terrifying intensity, the young man warned that anyone who harmed his precious sister would face his wrath. The maid watched in fear as the two bizarre beings kneeled respectfully before her brother. It's dark and cold. Something feels wrong. The weird creatures quietly signal, "Shh." Is her brother causing this strange feeling? The worried woman sweats, her face etched with confusion and fear about what's happening. Both strange creatures look tense, the cat visibly trembling, reacting to the intense atmosphere around the boy. "Stop it! Bradley!" the young woman screamed, reaching out as dark energy swirled around the menacing figures behind her brother. He calmly smiled, telling his sister it was okay, and explaining the figures were demons summoned from the netherworld by his anger. Demons? The worried woman stammered, utterly shocked as her brother confirmed that was exactly right. The cat-like being, smirking slightly, bowed respectfully, declaring it was a great honor to see him again. The other creature, solemn and submissive, added that their very lives were in the young man's hands, for they were his servants. The strange beings demanded they listen, leaving the poor maid utterly confused about being called a servant. With a chilling smirk, the young man stated he'd kill anyone opposing him or scaring his big sister. A shockwave of realization hit the worried sister, her face a mask of pure disbelief. "Brad!" she screamed, her hand connecting sharply with his face in utter desperation. Wide, panicked eyes reflected the terrifying situation, filled with fear for what he'd become. His eyes narrowed, full of shock or anger after her desperate slap. Oh my God, she just slapped him! The embarrassed student stared in horror, realizing she actually just slapped her own brother. Her face was furious. She hadn't raised him to talk about killing people like that, and demanded why he would even say such a thing. Pointing a finger right at him, his sister sternly told the young man not to take someone's life so lightly. Before she knew it, the terrifying dog demon grabbed her, demanding she kneel and apologize at once for hitting their king. The menacing dog demon snarled, demanding she kneel and apologize right away, threatening her. But she wasn't backing down, yelling this was a family matter and those trespassers shouldn't interfere. She absolutely refused to apologize. Still held, the worried sister pointed, yelling about the dark creature's fur and ordering him not to get closer or Brad would cough. The tall demon glared, telling the feisty woman to stop talking and muttering she was sure a chatterbox. And so they stood, the maid and the two bizarre figures, facing her brother, who looked back calmly from the bed. The young man, suddenly serious, demands his sister be released, and surprisingly, the huge demon actually complies with an understood. The embarrassed student is completely stunned into silence, unsure what to even think as the grip on her vanishes. Shifting tactics, the large demon surprisingly asks the recently freed woman if she is okay and if he hurt her during the struggle. Ignoring the strange demons, the maid immediately turns all her attention to her brother, asking if he is the one who's okay and hurt. He just looks away guiltily, murmuring a quiet apology to his sister for whatever just happened. The young man apologized for being weird, explaining it was because he heard the sound of a clock tower bell earlier that afternoon. Her eyes widened in shock, A clock tower bell? She had heard that bell too. Suddenly she remembered. That was exactly when she pulled the holy sword. The terror of that moment returned. He explained the sound made him suddenly remember who he was, with strange, unknown memories mixing in. A chilling expression crossed his face as he admitted he felt himself becoming more and more cruel. The worried sister realizes that whoever hears the bell right when the holy sword is pulled, well, Brad is connected somehow. Her brother calmly states it feels the same inside him and honestly doesn't care if those demons live or die. Yikes. Turning her gaze back to the two strange beings, she just murmurs, "Demons," again, trying to process it all. If those two terrifying creatures were really summoned by him, the young woman thought with dread, what does that even mean for her brother? Still, despite the horrifying revelation, she just keeps watching the bizarre scene, a flicker of determination on her face. The young man looked surprised, watching his sister stand up to the bizarre creatures he'd summoned. She remembered how weak he was, always near death, explaining why she prayed to the goddess nightly for him. Clutching his hand tightly, she thought about him, her precious brother, saying his name softly. Through the window, her prayers weren't just for his health, but also for their long-gone parents. But she fiercely told the young man she didn't like him taking lives lightly, adding she didn't care what he had become. The young woman prayed for her brother, finding happiness just in his presence despite the uncertain meaning of her pleas. Her brother seemed a bit surprised, feeling like she was maybe forcing her prayers onto him, offering a quiet apology. Meanwhile, the strange demonic creatures stood ready, with one adding simply, "But after all," back with her brother, he gave a slight smile, confirming something with a quiet yes, yet admitting, "I don't like it." Suddenly, the maid seemed taken aback by his touch, while he strangely noted, "It's warm," which was super confusing given his earlier cold hands. The young man felt his sister's touch, a faint smile touching his lips as he commented her hands were wonderfully warm. He looked away, his smile tinged with sadness, realizing he had hurt her despite her endless love for him. Her heart echoed his name. Clutching her hands, he gazed earnestly at her face and offered a simple, heartfelt apology. A wave of pure relief washed over the maid. This was her, Brad, and she smiled, recognizing her brother again. But just as quickly, his expression grew serious, and the young man turned to address the strange creatures lurking nearby. The worried sister checked on her brother, asking if he was okay or tired, and he replied he'd rest for a bit, giving a small smile. Standing nearby, the two bizarre creatures faced off, declaring they would keep everyone's hands off the king's precious sister. Despite the chaos, the poor woman somehow found herself seated at the table, sharing a meal with the strange beings and her brother, who remained oddly calm. Later, the maid sipped from a cup, looking completely stressed by this sudden, ridiculous turn of events she was somehow living. But then, something new appeared, prompting the stunned inquiry. "What's this?" The cat-like creature gushed about how super cute their sleeping king looked, while the big dog demon just stood there, utterly unimpressed. The smaller creature then added how great it was to see him looking healthy and lovely, which seemed to remind his companion of the young man's past, gallant figure. The cat creature, blowing on a hot drink, mused aloud about why humans even like hot beverages, much to the larger demon's continued silence and the maid's enduring stress. The young woman, totally over it, finally asked why they were even casually drinking tea right now, while the big guy cynically muttered something about masochists, and the weird cat finally got why hot drinks were a struggle for him. Suddenly, the maid slams her hand down, yelling, "That's my line!" because she planned to stay right there by her brother's side until he woke up. The large demon sternly warned her not to get too close, claiming even her scattered hair touching him was unacceptable. He demanded fiercely if she was stupid, asking just who she thought her brother really was. The maid gave an awkward laugh, then declared firmly that he was simply her sweet little brother, duh. Apparently, a demon lord naturally recovers power and memories, and nothing would invade his body under their protection. With an unsettling smile, the small demon confirmed it plainly. "It's a demon lord, elder sister." Her jaw practically dropped. She couldn't believe her ears, stammering back about demon. The strange cat creature just casually dropped that he knew the goddess of spring way back, like 1,000 years ago. And then the beings added the final punch. Her little brother was apparently the reincarnation of their demon lord king. Reincarnation? What? These bizarre beings then formally introduced themselves as Glenn and Wolfgang, the demon lord's servants, claiming they'd known her brother forever. The polite cat demon actually chided his companion for being rude, while the poor woman could only stare, completely lost in the absurdity. The big dog demon sternly warned the cat creature to treat the elder sister politely, or face being erased for real this time. This woman, furious about being called useless near her brother, retorted that that's exactly why she's his sister. The cat creature then shut the other demon up, pointing out they wouldn't even be here if it weren't for her, leaving the maid stunned. That moment she pulled the holy sword. Her sweet little brother transformed and woke up as the freaking demon lord. Because of her, these wild demons showed up, and she couldn't help but wonder what it all truly meant. The cat demon explained the demon lord's power grows from negative emotions, creating the path to their world. The other creature declared they came rushing back to their king's side using that very path. Negative emotions? The maid gasped, realizing her own panic might have caused this, wondering what she'd done. The tall demon sneered, asking if she was talking about some random guy with their king, calling her a fool. A guy? The confused woman just blinked, totally lost by his weird question. Wait, she thought, mentioning a guy. Oh right, she was talking about her Prince Blair encounter before the weirdos showed up. She remembered telling him about meeting the prince, specifically up to the weird part where he totally tickled her side. Meanwhile, the little cat demon giggled, thinking the king must have been jealous and noting how cute His Majesty is. While the big one was shocked, their king's displeasure created a hole for two demons. He grabbed her hand, explaining the king cherished her so much he got jealous and tried to strangle them, urging her to stir up more anger. What? The cat demon beamed, offering to lend her power if needed, telling her to just go wild and cause trouble. Huh? The cat demon suggests she's at an age for romance and should find a random guy at a gathering place. She looks totally done. He adds she must be excited by popular girl stories, which only makes her look more horrified. That's even worse, she yells, clarifying her goal is to be a slutty woman, not just popular, while the big demon shares her intensity. Look, I have no interest in being popular or a slut, the young woman insists, adding she definitely won't cooperate with any demons. The big demon leans in with a creepy smirk, suggesting she just wants to be seduced instead. She looks utterly disgusted. The cat demon suggested the poor woman needed to look much nicer if she ever hoped for success. But the big demon quickly warned the cat to stop if he was making their king uncomfortable with his insolent behavior. The small demon then mused that with only 3 followers having awakened, their numbers felt awfully small. The distressed woman looked up, utterly bewildered, asking if 3 followers by any chance included her in that count. Of course, the grinning cat declared. His Majesty's blood relative was the perfect human shield and sacrifice for the king. The stressed-out maid figured, okay, fine. She just wouldn't talk about guys when her brother was around. The big dog demon snarled. That wasn't enough. She couldn't cause any trouble for their king and shouldn't even look at men. The cat demon slyly asked if she had a guy in mind, suggesting she shouldn't fall in love at her age but enjoy youth more. "Shut your trap!" the big demon yelled, while the maid indignantly added, "She wasn't even saying she wanted to fall in love." The little cat demon just stuck out his tongue, muttering that strength or a castle wasn't needed unless their king specifically wanted it anyway. The cat demon explained how the king's sick body made his current life a struggle. Utterly confused by their talk, the maid just blinked, processing the weird situation. How strange, she thought, that even these weirdos seemed to care about their master. Yet she questioned why he was sick if their protection prevented attacks like this. The demon clarified his human birth conflicted with his demon nature, causing the poor balance. Glenn, the smug rabbit demon, declared the demon lord's life force was expected to recover, bringing back his strength. "Life force?" the young woman repeated, utterly shocked and asking if Bradley would really get better. Seeing her reaction, Wolfgang barked, "What's with that look?" She felt a mix of hope and disbelief, replying yes, but no doctor had ever said that before. Is he really going to get better? The maid wondered, remembering praying nightly to the goddess for him, as he always weakened when seasons changed. The maid's eyes light up with hope, internally shouting yes at the possibility her brother might actually recover. Feeling completely drained, she leans over, sighing, "Thank goodness," as the weird cat demon asks what's wrong. A wave of exhaustion washes over her. If getting better means being a demon lord, maybe that's okay. But she feels totally zapped. The big demon then chimes in, stating that if the recovery is real. Suddenly, someone declares being a demon lord is awful and insists he must return to the demon world. But the maid absolutely shuts that idea down. The cat demon Glenn just flat out asked why they would go home, saying she could just leave by herself. Seeing their absolute determination to stay, the young woman was totally freaking out, realizing they were seriously intent on sticking around. The other creature, Wolfgang, snarled that they had zero plans of leaving His Majesty's side and demanded if she planned to snatch him away from them. "What?" she exclaimed, pointing out the obvious problem. She couldn't keep them here because the big guy and his companion were simply too huge. Besides, the stressed-out sister wondered aloud where they even planned to sleep in her tiny house. If the neighbors found out about demons, the extermination squad would show up. They negotiated a bit then. The creature with sharp teeth grimly explained they had no choice, making the distressed maid frantically scream for him to stop. Thinking of cleaning that dusty thing, the young woman suddenly gets an idea, her eyes widening in surprise. Just then, a cat with a seriously weird grin materialized in the mist, looking way too smug on a broken fence. Suddenly, a cat appeared, preparing to jump near a glass, catching the maid completely by surprise. The worried woman wonders if they can actually change their massive forms to fit in the house. The little demon cat looks totally bored, demanding she act way more surprised by this whole thing. Petting the now normal-sized cat, she explained she was shocked. It truly felt like a fairy tale at first. She mused to the feline demon how surprisingly fairy tale-like transformations were. He confirmed it's their specialty. The maid sighed, realizing this smaller size solves the sleeping space issue. But she was still totally screwed. The maid gulped hard, totally stressed out, while the little cat demon just stared up at her. This is bad, she thought, panicking. Don't tell me that guy too? And she demanded to know what kind of that he meant. The big demon suggested they transform into local critters so nobody would notice. But she stammered a frantic, No, wait! Stop it! Please don't think like that!" she yelled, grabbing her head as puffs of smoke started appearing. And just like that, Amidst swirls of magic, the big dog demon became a fluffy white rabbit. The maid glared at the newly fluffy creature, pointing accusingly and yelling that it was totally a dog, right? Her expression softened slightly into disbelief, still watching the fluffy rabbit muttering, "Really?" But then she saw the full size. The massive rabbit claimed this was totally normal size in the demon world, leaving her utterly shocked. Reaching out, the young woman couldn't help but squish his ridiculously large, fluffy body. Even with his massive size, the creature was somehow balanced precariously on a tiny stool. Poor thing wobbling. The worried woman absolutely insists the giant rabbit must change into a dog, since that's what it looks like anyway. The massive creature mutters a disgruntled "shh" as her hand squishes its surprisingly soft cheek. She wonders why it likes being a giant rabbit so much, even if it's used to the transformation, noting its continued grumpiness. As it starts to transform again with a "humph," the confused woman wonders what it really is back in the demon world. Now a magnificent white fox, the being looks back at her, asking if she's finally satisfied with this new form. Phew, the maid sighs, deciding these small demon forms are finally an acceptable size to deal with after all that transforming nonsense. But then the little cat demon hops right onto her head, proving living with demons is exactly as annoying as expected. The cat gets comfy, cheekily telling the miserable woman they'll be relying on their elder sister from now on. Suddenly, the little demon declares he must rush back to his king's side and jumps off her head towards the bedroom. Nope. The maid grabs the cat by the scruff, firmly reminding him they agreed he wasn't allowed by her brother's bed. The little cat demon cheekily declared he'd just crash at His Majesty's feet instead. Meanwhile, the other creature, now a fluffy white fox, crept towards the bedroom door. But the cat creature instantly shrieked, yelling that he absolutely couldn't go in there. The young woman immediately grabbed the fox, demanding to know why he was doing that. Furious, the maid stood hands on hips, yelling she was the master here and would kick them out if they didn't listen. The small demons looked utterly unimpressed and maybe a little annoyed by the woman's rant. Someone's footsteps sounded softly as a door creaked open, entering a room. The young man slept peacefully in bed, looking completely oblivious to the chaos. Gazing down at him, the maid softly spoke his name, a mixture of worry and tenderness on her face. It truly felt like so much crazy stuff had happened just today, she thought, utterly overwhelmed. The maid sat quietly beside her brother's bed, the day drawing to a close. Despite everything, sitting there, she just felt utterly drained, like it had been an impossibly long day. All the strange, intense talk they had felt like just pointless nonsense now anyway. Looking at the young man, however, she couldn't help but think, but if he really is getting better? Resting her head near him, she gently thought that hope could simply be tomorrow's wish. Sleep tight, Brad, the worried woman thought, her love for him unwavering no matter who he might be now. Nearby, the transformed creatures discussed how there was apparently a sign of the goddess right there in her hands. One of the demons quietly wondered if it was actually okay not to just kill that girl. But the other one replied, "Isn't she the actual hero of the Holy Sword anyway?" He explained he'd totally tried to attack her while she made tea, but some kind of seal blocked him. The larger creature sternly warned his companion not to act on his own accord, or their king wouldn't forgive him. But the sly feline shot back with a smug smile, asking if the other would really tattle on him anyway. The little cat added that their king already had few followers, so losing one would be detrimental, right? His companion looked unimpressed. Then the feline demon pondered aloud if this whole setup was the goddess's doing, wondering why their king was the hero's brother. The rabbit-fox creature just looked away thoughtfully, admitting he wondered about that question himself. As she slept, the thought lingered. There just had to be some bigger plan behind all this chaos. Sitting quietly, the little cat demon wondered if the goddess intended the hero to actually take down their king, which was just oh so annoying. His slitted eye narrowed, thinking how the goddess of spring was definitely one sneaky customer, always up to something. Talking to the other creature, the sly demon mused their king couldn't resist her if she tried, suggesting maybe they should just get rid of the hero entirely. But the larger demon countered, reminding him they were ordered not to harm the girl, though without the sword, doing her in might just be possible. One of the strange creatures mused that she wouldn't easily become the holy sword's victim, pondering her resilience. The small cat demon then added with a smug smirk that sometimes humans could be even crueler than them. His companion agreed, mentioning how even royalty in this country kill each other just for power, if things get serious. With a fierce glare, the white fox declared he would handle that girl himself, even if it angered their king. But the little cat demon cut him off, saying that was enough discussion for one night, and told the fox to just go to bed. The sly cat plans his move early. The king demands more power and servants. Glenn thinks using her might make him stronger. The smug feline then thought about Prince Blair with a smirk. That guy was competition, maybe? Meanwhile, back outside, the town felt annoyingly normal under the watchful eye of the small clock tower. Morning light streamed softly through the window curtains. The young woman stirred, rubbing her eyes, realizing she'd drifted off, and it was already morning. Someone was already up, fully dressed, and looking surprisingly chipper, asking if she was finally awake. Her eyes snapped open, wide with absolute shock at who was standing right there. Utterly bewildered, she stammered, asking why he was there and trying to process the unexpected guest. Prince Blair greets her with a kiss. She wakes, totally shocked and blushing. Her Prince Charming, right there. His regal uniform was undeniable, confirming who had somehow ended up in her bedroom. Working as a maid at the palace, she unbelievably pulled the holy sword, something only the goddess's chosen hero was meant to do. Brother became demon lord. Oops, his negative energy summoned scary demons. And then, well, this. Turns out the prince was there, leaning in for a big, unexpected kiss. The prince just calmly smiled, greeting her with a good morning, like this was normal. She woke up feeling shocked and blushing, thinking, why is he in my room? This day was already shaping up to be a total mess. The young man moved swiftly behind her, maybe reaching out as he closed the distance. He looked back with a smug smirk, stating, no, it's not the prince, which totally didn't make sense. Gulping hard, the distressed woman pulled the sheet around her, thinking this was all impossible while he asked if something was wrong. The worried woman pointed a shaking finger, yelling, you are... like she finally figured something out, or maybe she was just losing it. How on earth could he be in a maid's tiny house, let alone sitting there all smiley? Suddenly, a small creature went flying with a shocked squawk, yelling about the sound and asking what was wrong. The handsome young man in uniform just sat on the bed, roaring with laughter and giving a triumphant thumbs up, while someone nearby looked totally bewildered. Nearby, the large white fox draped himself protectively over the girl, a worried hey escaping him. Looking at the startled young woman, the guy asked innocently if she'd found out already and could perhaps tell that troublesome cat not to pull weird stunts. The annoyed woman struggles with the giant white rabbit demon, pulling it away and ordering the cat demon to stop laughing and change back. The cat demon, still wearing the prince's face, pouts that his effort to transform into him was wasted. With a sly smirk, the guy leans in close, suggesting they flirt more, asking if that sounds good. Elder sister. No way! The woman shouts, shoving him away and telling him to practice his flirting on a real cat instead. The giant rabbit then gives the annoyed woman a firm push back towards the bed, while the cat demon just keeps cackling. The young woman admits she actually loves cats, but couldn't have them because her brother's asthma made it impossible. The guy in the prince's form looks totally confused by her confession, asking what she even means by that. Laughing hysterically, the young woman tickles the massive rabbit demon, telling it to act like a cute kitty. Exasperated, she tells the cat demon to transform back already, so she can finally enjoy some proper cat fluff. The strange cat demon watches, musing that this chaotic woman is the hero of the holy sword, while someone nearby shrieks in protest. A quiet morning settles over the town's rooftops and lampposts. Someone's looking super tired, covering a big yawn. He gets all flustered, denying he was waiting for anyone, especially her, asking if she didn't show up. Just then, the young woman arrives, and an older woman informs her he stayed up restlessly until midnight, hoping she'd visit. The older man, carrying his basket, sighs about his son's impatience, muttering how he told her she could pay back any time. Older man sighs, pushing his son Reed towards the store, telling him to go inside. The young man protests loudly, denying he was restless and begging him not to say anything weird. Reed spots Eleanor and greets her cheerfully with a big wave. She replies with a quiet, polite good morning. The woman smiles sheepishly, apologizing for not having given him the money she owed him the day before. Holding out the basket and money, he thanks her for helping him, but then immediately asks what's wrong. Her face looks pale. Shifting her concern, the young woman asks if he's okay, and if her brother Bradley's condition is worsening again. The young man rubs his eye, admitting he's just a little sleep-deprived. She yells in alarm as he offers to check on her brother. He reassures her brother's sleeping, and surprisingly looks better than before. The little demon cat remarks she has a good reaction, while she thinks Reed must never meet them. The fake prince walks away, expecting more from her, as she wonders where he's going. Turning back to her confused friend, the maid demands to know what he meant by good reaction. He tells her she's been working non-stop and needs a break, adding he's worried about Brad, too. She looks stressed, thinking about yesterday and how she doesn't know when she can leave him again. Missing work means they might look for her at home, she realizes, especially if Prince Blair comes looking. Prince Blair will surely order her, the hero, to fight the demon lord, and his guards might find Brad or the demons. So, she decides, going to work normally seems the best bet to avoid the absolute worst-case scenario. The maid, a little flustered, explains that today is payday, which is why she needs money. Her kind friend realizes she's totally right, noting that it's already the end of the month as birds chirp. Reed tells her not to work too hard, offering to make dinner again, while quietly musing about maybe running away with the demon lord. He insists she doesn't overdo it at work, promising to make her dinner later tonight. Blushing bright red, the young woman stammers out her sincere thanks for his offer. Reed cheerfully tells the young woman her brother is better and he'll visit for dinner later. Suddenly, the embarrassed student's hand shoots out, grabbing his arm, stopping him cold. Eyes wide with absolute terror, the worried woman grips her friend's arm, begging him not to go to her house today because her face is scary, apparently. The day passed quietly under a vast sky, a calm before the inevitable storm. Meanwhile, back at the palace, the legendary holy sword remains stubbornly lodged in the tree trunk. Prince Blair stood before the ancient tree, the legendary blade still stuck fast where she'd shoved it back in. A thoughtful, serious look settled on the prince's face, the silence speaking volumes about his confusion. The morning sun illuminated the grand palace grounds, hinting at the day's formal duties. With a determined stride, he walked down the long, echoing palace hallway, purpose clear in every step. His gaze remained sharp and focused, clearly set on whatever important task lay ahead. Passing through a palace hallway, the prince encountered several members of the royal staff looking rather stiff and formal. An unexpected voice cut through the air as someone shorter called out, "Oh, how unexpected to meet you here, older brother." Wearing a smirk, the young man greeted him brightly, asking if he'd been praying in front of that stubborn holy sword again. The prince's face tightened slightly, calling out, "Klaus," in what sounded like an exasperated sigh at his brother's antics. Meanwhile, some staff members nearby couldn't help but cover their mouths, trying desperately to hide their giggles at the princely squabble. Klaus cheerfully brought up how his older brother had also scolded and scared a maid just yesterday. Prince Blair sighed, admitting it was about that maid, while Klaus warned him against treating anyone, however insignificant, poorly if he wanted popular support. Looking away dismissively, the prince simply asked, "Yes?" and claimed he didn't recall scolding her about anything at all. But then Blair turned with an intense gaze, declaring he'd correct any inappropriate behavior, whether it was the maid or even Klaus himself. The younger prince's face twisted with anger, insisting that calling someone insignificant was unforgivable, and reminding him palace guards were citizens too. The prince sternly insisted his brother should really control that kind of behavior. But the younger prince just yelled back, not wanting to hear any self-righteousness from that grim face. His brother then smugly brought up the failed marriage proposal again, asking why not just scare weak people instead. Turning away stiffly, the prince simply told him it was none of his business anyway. The older prince looked totally shocked, as his brother specified that it was the neighboring princess who turned him down. Klaus announced his marriage was settled peacefully, thanks to his close aide standing right there. It was because Blair was hated by the princess, he added, explaining their factions grew stronger from new ties. Then, the younger prince and his companion bowed low, a gesture of, "What exactly?" Turning, Klaus declared they would like to offer their thanks for something. He then added he'd pray to the goddess again tomorrow as a token of his gratitude. Prince Blair suggested that with his current perspective, his younger brother couldn't possibly understand what being king truly entailed. The young man looked utterly shocked by the condescending tone, flinching back as his brother dismissed him. Walking away down the palace hall, he fumed, thinking, "Did that guy just say I'm not qualified for the throne?" Turning to his companion, Prince Klaus sharply ordered his people to keep a very close eye on his older brother. With a determined snarl, the younger prince vowed he would definitely find a weakness and knock him off his high horse. Someone walks purposefully, points gained. A kid excitedly declares, "I'm gonna be a hero!" But failing, he cries, "I can't pull it out!" It had truly been a long, long time since anyone came close. Someone walked the palace halls, determined to protect the hero from political games. Gazing into her own reflection, the young woman felt a sigh escape her lips, wondering if any of this was okay, while a protective thought about her, the maid, seemed to linger. Back at the palace, her head maid looked surprised, immediately asking Eleanor if she'd changed her hairstyle. Peering down at her braided hair, she knew she had to change herself somehow. "Really?" the older woman questioned, adding that she didn't look like herself if she hid her forehead like that. The maid just gave a sly smirk, thinking that hopefully, maybe that meant nobody would recognize her. A fellow maid urgently called out, telling Eleanor the head maid needed her right away. "Eh? Today too?" the startled maid exclaimed, wondering if being instantly recognized meant more trouble. Responding with a meek, Oh, is that so?" She heard that it wasn't about the advanced exam she'd taken. The young woman knew she tried her best to be unrecognizable, leaving a fellow maid wondering how the head maid kept spotting her. She announced she'd be leaving for a bit. Running down the hall, the stressed maid thought she hoped she could just escape with her salary, while her friend told her not to run. The maid realizes with dread the head maid is calling for her again. Outside, the palace windows gleam, indifferent to the troubles within its walls. She absolutely must hurry, pushing herself faster, knowing more trouble awaits. Then, a sudden exclamation hints at something important being spotted nearby. A dramatic wah erupts as the situation escalates unexpectedly. "Oh great, running into Prince Blair again, this really hurts." Falling to her knees, she frantically apologized, asking if he was hurt and why he was even here. The prince just stared down, looking totally annoyed by her dramatics and sudden appearance. He chuckled, telling the poor woman that since it was her workplace, She could go wherever she pleased. The surprised woman stared as the fake prince reached out, calmly telling elder sister it was totally okay. He wasn't mad, she yelled, realizing he wasn't the prince, but the annoying cat demon. He leaned closer, smugly asking if she was actually praising him with her reaction. She screamed, telling the creature he was way too much for her heart to handle right now. Wailing dramatically, she ordered him to stop being Prince Blair and turn back into a normal cat. With renewed annoyance, she pointed again, yelling that he wasn't the prince, just the nasty cat demon in disguise. The smug guy in the prince's body leaned in, asking if she was actually praising him. She shrieked, grabbing herself, insisting it wasn't good for her poor heart right now. The exasperated woman pointed furiously, yelling he needed to turn back into a cat immediately. Now a small cat again. The creature flicked its tail, declaring he wouldn't compare his king to some old bearded guy. But then the young woman gasped, her eyes wide, asking if Brad had just woken up. The tiny cat demon chirps that their king, her brother, was totally worried about her safety. She clasps her hands. Touched her brother was worried, feeling relieved he's okay after his strange behavior. The small feline confirms he is absolutely fine, calming her jitters slightly with the good news. He explains the grumpy fox-rabbit demon is taking good care of His Majesty, handling his needs and fresh air. Seeing him cared for, the young woman lets out a grateful sigh, relieved he's okay and not alone. The worried woman lets out an exasperated "Eh!" hearing that grumpy demon is handling her brother's care. The cat demon offers to watch her, while she panics thinking the big dog demon is alone with Brad. But the creature suddenly grabs her arm, insisting she must obey His Majesty's orders and can't refuse. Still in his small form, the cat demon gives a creepy smirk, warning he might do something nasty while she's gone. Popping up outside the window, the creature smugly announces he'll be watching from somewhere over there, as she sweats in distress. The awful truth hits her like a brick. She's allowed a demon right into the royal palace grounds. Her face crumples in utter horror at the magnitude of her blunder. Panicked, she shouts out the window, ordering the little cat demon to stop and the fox demon to go check on something. Back at the palace, the young prince looks troubled, realizing it will be a huge problem if someone sees the demon he just saw. And indeed, the large, fluffy white fox looks thoroughly annoyed, apparently stuck halfway through a palace window. A creature gets stuck at the palace window. An intense silence follows. The prince reacts in shock. He realizes the demon looked like the dog from Eleanor's house. It closed the window. This is bad. Meanwhile, the worried young woman quickly glances towards the window, hoping her orders were followed. Eating at the table, the young man hears off-panel shouts asking if he's okay and calling for his friend Reed. Bursting through the door, the worried friend ignores her warning, saying he came because he was worried and asking what was wrong. The basket of food sits on the table between them, ready to be shared. Smiling genuinely, her brother thanks her for the food, saying he couldn't eat it yesterday but is enjoying it now. Wait, the friend gasps. Is Brad okay? He seems to have spotted that unsettling giant fox demon chilling nearby. The young man insists he's already fine. It's not a big deal now. Which makes his friend question if he didn't used to have asthma. True, the friend silently acknowledges, processing how unusual this claim is for him. Meanwhile, peeking over the table, the giant fox demon looks thoroughly unimpressed as someone thinks he definitely looks better than yesterday. But there's a catch. The friend's eyes bug out as he spots the massive white fox demon just chilling there, leaving him utterly speechless. Still frozen in shock, the young man can only stare at the bizarre creature sitting casually by the table. Petting the giant fox, Brad casually introduced the creature as his dog, Wolfgang. His friend's eyes bugged out, totally shocked, and asking if he was actually keeping a dog. He looked around the tiny house, muttering how the space was a bit cramped for such a big dog. His poor friend just stood there in stunned silence, his mind clearly blown by this bizarre pet. As the friend put a hand on him, the young man looked utterly confused, asking what he meant by that reaction. The young man smiled, accepting the food and saying he'd bring some for his big furry friend too. The little fox demon watched them, thinking the friend was also pampering their king, just like his sister. Brad smiled, noting the friendly atmosphere, and saw the young man was wondering what kind of dog food to make for him. Even so, the demon creature mused. He'd only ever seen fierce faces back in the demon world. Brad's face was peacefully cheerful with Eleanor and his friend. Though his physical state wasn't great, his mental state was. The furry demon watched, musing that their king was being treated rather favorably here. Suddenly, the creature was lifted with a slight yelp as someone announced, "Up we go!" He sweated nervously, maybe hearing "Your Majesty" again, and told to just eat in peace. This is weird in this form. The kind friend lifted the large demon, deciding he'd just bathe the big guy outside to be safe. The young man smiled sweetly at the departing creature, telling Wolfgang to be a good boy during his bath. The young man smiled unsettlingly, giving a casual command that his companion absolutely must not disobey him. Holding the terrified, fluffy creature, the kind friend calmly acknowledged something, while the demon inwardly panicked about being killed if he messed with the guy. Meanwhile, the brother cheerfully waved goodbye from the table, thinking about how heavy the furry creature was and deciding to brush him first. Suddenly, a thoughtful look crossed the young man's face as he wondered if his big sister was doing okay right now. Back at the palace, the worried woman panicked, realizing she'd lost sight of that pesky cat demon and hoping he hadn't lost sight of her. The small, stressed maid looked around frantically, totally losing sight of that annoying cat demon and panicking if he turned into Prince Blair again. She sighed, walking down the long palace hall toward the head maid, already super late, but worried bumping into the real prince would be even worse trouble. Her eyes wide with panic, she worried about losing sight of Glenn. While the fox creature nearby thought Glenn better not lose track of their big sis. Still stressed out of her mind, the maid kept looking around, desperately hoping that awful cat hadn't transformed back into Prince Blair and caused a giant scene. Sighing again, the young woman hurried to face the head maid, dreading what might happen if she bumped into the actual Prince Blair. Goddess's hero. Maid looks worried. Handsome figure stands cloaked, perhaps watching. Maid reacts, totally confused by it all. She stops abruptly, startled, a gasp escaping her lips. Her eyes widen in sudden recognition or alarm as she realizes who's there. This guy, still in the prince's familiar form, looked intense, maybe even annoyed. Suddenly, the maid grabbed him, yelling that he'd done this stupid transformation again. Her hand immediately grabbed his hair, making him flinch back, clearly startled by her attack. Pulling his hair, she screamed he shouldn't be so stubborn and pretend to be Prince Blair, while he wondered how she found him. Looking troubled, he told her his lifespan was shortening with every minute she was there, and ordered her to go home right away. The guy, still looking annoyed, tells her he'll cook fish when he gets home, urging her to hurry up and leave. He pauses, thinking leaving through the first-floor window might actually be the better plan for their escape. She stares back, asking if he, being a cat and all, can just scoot right out the window. The young woman points dramatically, shouting for him to just get out of the palace and go back home already. Suddenly, her face contorts in horror as a terrible realization hits her. Wait, don't tell me. The young man looked surprised, asking if she'd forgotten the way home herself. Sighing deeply, the maid lamented what a completely troublesome cat he was being. He just stared back with a serious, slightly annoyed expression. Realizing there was no other way, the worried woman declared she'd just escort him out of the palace herself. Pointing emphatically, she yelled again for him to just leave and go home, while the demon just blinked, asking, "Me? Home?" Her face contorts in horror as a terrible realization hits her. Wait, don't tell me. The young man looked surprised, asking if she'd forgotten the way home herself. Sighing deeply, the maid lamented what a completely troublesome cat he was being. He just stared back with a serious, slightly annoyed expression. Realizing there was no other way, the worried woman declared she'd just escort him out of the palace herself. The startled woman is caught mid-air by the annoyed cat demon, petals fluttering down around them. Her face flushed bright red as she murmured a small, embarrassed "thank you." The disguised creature sweats slightly, thinking she acts strangely sometimes, even for a human. The cat demon rolls around laughing, yelling she's the best even when he did nothing. Blushing and flustered, the young woman wonders what to do now, while the demon thinks she's cute. The guy in the prince's cloak asks why her face turned red when he carried her, saying just a stupid face was enough. Meanwhile, the small cat demon, now in his true form, thinks timing is super important right about now. The cloaked figure tells the young woman to just enjoy wandering around the palace halls for a while, which sounds ominous. Someone remembers when Prince Klaus was a little kid, desperately following his older brother, looking totally adorable back then. But then, he grew up and declared them rivals, the prince's younger brother thinks with a smug smile. The young woman hurried away quickly and secretly, while behind her, whispers suggested the goddess's hero must dedicate herself to the crown prince. Apparently, it was pretty easy to figure out that maids passed just by looking. The person who cleaned near the goddess's tree yesterday. Ah, that must be Eleanor Twain. It turns out Earl Twain was a general's former aide, and the young man thought he recognized that name. He learned the family lord died a decade ago, losing their title and buried in debt, meaning the aide was indeed a former for a grim reason. Someone heard a concubine put Earl Twain in debt to weaken Lord Taggart, sparking speculation that the Twain family got mixed up in a factional dispute. Back then, the crown prince totally aced his first battle, making the concubine turn green with envy. That guy looking troubled thinks maybe someone just pushed themselves too hard, getting sick because of it. Turns out Lord Taggart took in Eleanor and her younger brother, but his wife didn't like her own sickly brother and would often butt heads with our maid. A younger Eleanor, looking absolutely fierce, shouts that her brother isn't sick or a jinx, and she'll raise him to be a stunning gentleman. The young man in the cloak learned Lord Taggart helped the maid get her job at the palace. Poor thing. Her family's life was totally ruined by the royal throne struggle. Yelling at the guy, the maid demanded what was wrong, and if her offering fish wasn't good enough for his weird behavior. The young man looked utterly confused, asking what she meant by fish, while she fretted about sneaking past the guards without getting caught. When she asked what he meant by carrying her, the confused guy sweatingly thought the hero was impossible to understand, then offered to carry her if she just became a cat. Her face flushed slightly. The maid wondered if it was simply because his face was exactly her type. Still feeling flustered, she yelled at the demon in the prince's form, demanding why he chose to look like him anyway. The demon, still wearing the prince's golden hair and eyes, admitted that Prince Blair's appearance was totally his type. But she shot back that he was way too sharp-eyed, calling his ability to guess weaknesses scary, just like a demon would be. But standing out as Prince Blair couldn't be helped. The demon grumbled, reflecting that demons really were just awful sometimes. The weird guy in the cloak pointed out it would be super troublesome if she just turned into a cat and ran away. Grabbing his arm, the young woman panicked. They couldn't let the real Prince Blair find them, insisting he stay put. The demon just looked annoyed, asking who exactly she thought she was grabbing like that. Then, grabbing her hand firmly, he simply declared, "Okay, we're going home." A serious glint filled the creature's eye as he pulled her along. The young man pulled the panicked woman along, threatening not to let her inside his house if she dared run off again. As they walked, the guy insisted he wasn't Prince Blair, but her troublesome bad friend, confused why she seemed mistaken. "What do you even mean by a cat, though?" the human-shaped demon exclaimed, as a little cartoon cat popped up reminding him. The transformed demon looked thoughtful, wondering if she seriously thought she could just carry him if he turned into a cat. Still holding hands and walking, the creature in disguise pondered if maybe the young woman thought he was a rare, friendly wizard instead. Political observers note the maid must be protected by the crown prince's faction from Klaus. Confused, she's the goddess's hero. The guy in disguise grabs the worried woman's hand, wanting a private word and planning to extract information. Looking totally confused, the maid asks why his face is so serious and if they can just talk when they get home. She internally frets, realizing that means delaying her urgent meeting with the head maid at the palace. The cloaked figure insists that business is over. If they don't talk now, he simply won't leave the royal palace. Holding her hand, the young man in disguise asked if she wanted to go home, prompting the maid to yell back, shocked by the weird demand. As he turned and pulled her along, the distressed woman could only manage a startled noise, dragged along wherever he was taking her. Leading her into a more secluded, tree-filled area, he calmly stated it should be okay to talk right here, letting go of her hand to sit. The annoying creature declared she really was a demon, leaving the poor woman speechless, unable to deal with this now. Looking at her, he simply told her to sit down, and the stressed-out maid just stared back, unsure what to say next. Well, that's fine, the stressed-out woman thought, deciding it was way too late to make it back to the head maid's office anyway. Suddenly, a fierce glare cut through the air, directed right at her. The strange man's eyes widened in surprise, sweat beading as his intense look softened just a bit. "Why are you glaring at me?" the maid demanded, pointing out he had a nasty look and she had plenty to complain about herself, insisting she usually had common sense. The frustrated young woman threw up her hands, asking whose fault this whole ridiculous situation was anyway. The weird guy suddenly changed the subject, asking if she used to be an earl's daughter back in the day. He somehow knew she was under General Taggart's care, totally making the poor woman flinch, asking how on earth he knew. Covering her face in embarrassment, she stammered, realizing he knew about her uncle too, accusing him of leaking her secrets. Looking serious again, the demon in disguise mused that it was pretty scary he couldn't hide anything from a demon. She just stared back, totally bewildered and asking, "Eh?" like she couldn't process that last comment. The annoying guy just laughed, finding her reaction totally amusing. She just stared back, completely speechless and unsure what to even think. Yelling at the fake prince, she insisted she wouldn't be fooled by his smile and knew he was just the tricky cat demon. She glared fiercely, warning him not to dare mess with her uncle and insisting he was definitely up to something again. Muttering how unreliable she must seem as a hero, she prompts the demon to ask if she's even trying to intimidate him. The maid squared up, hand raised, ready to argue with the guy still sitting there, who just watched her. He looked slightly uneasy, perhaps even a little scared, but definitely annoyed by her questioning. The young woman sputtered, "Huh?" completely baffled, while he just snickered, thinking she was totally hopeless. With a smooth, charming smile, he simply told her to go ahead and take a seat right there. She let out a surprised gasp, stumbling slightly as she was pulled or pushed down, clearly not expecting that command. Pulled down hard, the maid lets out a surprised gasp as she tumbles onto the grass. The strange young man gently steadies her, his hand resting on her arm as she sits beside him. Looking back at him, the flustered woman asks if he isn't acting quite suspiciously. He tries to brush it off, but the maid insists he's just a lewd demon, right? He asks, "Quite what exactly?" His face twitches with annoyance or embarrassment, asking if she's implying he's used to treating women like that. The confused maid yells back that he was just saying things about aiming to be a slut. So why's he lecturing her now? She just stares, utterly bewildered and asking, "What?" at his sudden lecture. Sitting there, she hesitantly and awkwardly asks him, You're a cat, right?" The creature, still wearing the prince's face, looks thoughtful, pondering how exactly he should answer that question. The worried young woman looks utterly horrified as the being's internal thoughts reveal he must get the hero to his side, even if it means lying. The creature in disguise intently eyed the young woman, thinking she'd surely hide again if she learned the truth. Suddenly his hand shot out, grabbing her wrist firmly. Then, kneeling dramatically, the handsome figure held her hand and confirmed, "Yes, I am." The bizarre guy blinked, processing his own words. "I'm a cat?" The ground around the woman began to rumble, a sudden dark energy emanating from her. The hero's scolding somehow began right then and lasted an hour. He found the whole reproach thing utterly absurd. The demon endured it all just to understand her better. Enduring the lecture was apparently necessary to get a handle on this Eleanor Twain. The stressed woman yelled he needed to clean his own shed fur if he wanted to live there, while the guy was totally confused about fur but learned about her brother Brad. Enduring an hour of her goddess's test, just one thing was clearly understood about her, that Eleanor Twain was definitely a talkative girl. The young woman insisted there was more, moving on to Uncle Taggart, while the guy was totally bewildered. Listening to her ramble, the poor disguised creature thought he never knew talking could be this difficult. The young woman looks thoughtful, processing something she just realized. She tells the surprised guy that up close, he doesn't quite resemble Prince Blair. He defensively asks what part is different, insisting they look exactly alike from every angle. The young woman muses that Prince Blair always has a scary face and sharper eyes, a key difference. She concludes that even if the outside is the same, their insides are different, noting his crazy laughter. Peering up at the tree, a little cat sits on a branch while the guy in disguise points, calling her you. The creature looks flustered, pointing out that she's totally been calling him you lately. He looks incredibly embarrassed, asking if she's stopped calling him elder sister now. The maid looks smug, asking if he just thinks he can call her whatever since her brother isn't around. "Good grief," she yells, annoyed, declaring he's totally two-faced, leaving him flustered, acting like this is just going to get him totally suspected, he realized with a sweat drop. So, reluctantly, he managed to call her elder sister. Feeling completely awkward about using the term, the poor guy just kept blushing profusely, looking utterly flustered after forcing himself to say it. After all this time, she demanded. Why was he acting like he was dying of embarrassment just saying that? Her exasperated response was that he didn't need to force himself to call her that with such an obviously miserable face, sending him into total shock. He looks utterly flustered after saying that, while she stares, completely bewildered by his reaction. Trying to move past the awkwardness, she awkwardly asks what he actually wanted to talk about. With a serious face, the creature reveals he needed her help, though he seemed to stumble over the exact wording. Her cooperation? She muses her main priority is making sure her brother is absolutely safe, obviously. Sitting on the grass, the young woman admits this whole holy sword mess means she probably can't stay in the capital anymore. The strange guy asked pointedly if she really didn't plan on taking the holy sword, you know, as the country's supposed hero. But what now? She worried about keeping that thing near her brother, asking frantically if the holy sword wasn't actually bad for his health. Why? She demanded, looking totally annoyed. Like just because it's holy doesn't explain anything about it being potentially harmful. Sitting on the grass, she flatly declared she didn't want it anyway, only needing cutlery for home, then asked if he planned on using it for his evil deeds. He just looked confused, awkwardly mentioning, "Oh yeah, the grass sickle too," as if that was the obvious next item on the list. He pondered whether the holy sword's power could actually harm a human body, dismissing the idea she was the demon lord or the sword was that dangerous. Sitting awkwardly on the grass, she groaned in exasperation, admitting she still didn't understand anything about this confusing situation. Not even a little bit. Gazing up at the wide, indifferent sky, the poor woman just kept asking herself why on earth all this unbelievable chaos was happening to her right now. She hadn't slept a wink, totally freaked out thinking about those guys staying over, yet had to go to the royal palace where Prince Blair was just to get her salary. Back on the grass, the young man observed, she looked completely exhausted, and she wearily confirmed, yes, of course she was tired. The guy in disguise, looking confused or maybe thoughtful, repeats her accusation about him teasing her using Prince Blair's appearance. Looking totally surprised, the young man calls out to her, questioning if he should really use elder sister. Looking up, the young woman explains how she finally passed her exam, even making the head maid happy. But despite all that, she must now tell the head maid she has to resign, which is incredibly frustrating. He watches her, understanding the frustration of hard work wasted, though puzzled why she must throw it all away. The exhausted young woman accuses the guy beside her. Half her tiredness is totally his fault, right? Then, in classic troublesome cat fashion, he weirdly asks her if she can just turn into a cat for a bit. Her mind was absolutely reeling from all this nonsense, feeling like she was genuinely going crazy right now. If this kept up, she seriously might just start running around the palace grounds screaming her head off. Getting back up, the young woman warned him Brad would totally chew him out if she got caught by a guard because of his antics. He looks flustered after her lecture, trying to awkwardly shift gears with a hesitant, "Well then." "Come on," she says, exasperated, asking if he won't just change back into a fluffy cat for a bit. But he looks totally shocked, stammering out a "we what?" when she suggests he could even be a leopard too. She explains her motivation, insisting she just wants to touch his fluffy fur already. He spirals into confusion, thinking it's impossible to understand, completely baffled by her demand to touch fluffy fur. Her eyes were totally locked onto him, making him feel like she was already getting desperate. With a sudden exclamation, he just jumped right on top of her, sending them both tumbling. Still sprawled there, he brought up how she'd said she preferred cats to human guys earlier. She thought back to her friend Reed saying burying your face in soft fur felt soothing, and seriously wanted to try that right now. Looking completely flustered, he told her it was fine, just go ahead, leaving her utterly confused about what he meant. The annoyed woman poked at him, asking the stubborn demon if growing a little fur was so hard and if he wanted her help or not. Sweat rolled down the guy's face as he thought, "Do your best." With what exactly? Totally confused by her demand, suddenly something zipped past, and the demon jerked the girl out of the way just in time. Looking up at the sky, the worried woman blinked, wondering if that was just a bird flying by. The strange young man looked up with her, noting the object was long and seemed to have a tail. The strange object hitting the ground burned intensely, leaving a dark trail. Both the annoyed demon and the maid look utterly shocked by this burning object. The burning thing pulsed with energy. What in the world was happening? A strange teleportation magic flared, surrounding the disguised creature and the surprised woman. A magic formation finished instantly around her, leaving the supposed hero totally bewildered about who caused this. The cloaked man held the distressed young woman tight, sheltering her after the strange teleportation snatched them away. His eyes narrowed, realizing the hero was with him, and he needed to quickly figure out what the heck just happened. Clutching his cloak, the maid buried her face against him, trembling from the shock of being whisked away. The strange guy gently stroked her head, letting out a quiet sigh of relief that she was safe after that chaotic mess. Looking around their bizarre new location, the disguised demon wondered where that sudden magic had dumped them now. Suddenly, looking around, She blinked in confusion, realizing this strange place was actually her house. Still held tight by the cloaked guy, she stammered, utterly confused. Why? They had ended up right here, at her home. With a fierce yell, her brother erupted from the bed, ordering the creature to unhand his big sister immediately. Right on cue, that same heavy, oppressive feeling from yesterday filled the air, thick with ill omen. Her eyes widened in utter shock, yelling out about the cat as she finally pieced something together. She checks if he's okay after the magic, but he just points out she's still calling him a cat even now. He suddenly senses that same heavy, awful feeling from yesterday and wonders who's here now. Her brother erupts from his bed, surrounded by dark energy, yelling for them to get away from his sister. Amidst the terrifying black flames burning the ground, the scared woman clings to the disguised demon, feeling protected. Looking up in the sudden darkness, the maid realizes the guy who looks like Prince Blair is protecting her. She blinked, utterly confused, realizing this strange place was somehow her own house, a disappointing spot since he wasn't the real prince. Stop, not the time. Her brother erupted from the bed, ordering the creature to unhand his big sister immediately, wrapped defensively in his blanket. Her eyes widened in utter shock, yelling out about the cat. Amidst terrifying dark energy, the young man stood, looking angry, telling them to get away from his big sister right now. His face remained intensely serious, surrounded by the strange, swirling darkness. She looked at her brother, glad he seemed better, but still worried about the dark energy swirling around him. Suddenly, a hand shot out and grabbed her arm with startling force. Her brother glared fiercely, dark energy lashing out, warning her the guy holding her was dangerous and telling her not to go anywhere with him. But she looked utterly bewildered, thinking, obvious? What exactly was so obvious about the guy behind her? With a cry, she felt a strong pull on her arm as her brother yanked her towards him. Clinging to his sister, the young man fiercely demanded to know who that guy was behind her. With a glare, he pressed his sister, asking why on earth that person was hugging her. Meanwhile, the disguised creature sweat dropped, recalling her explanation about being scared and just happening to land in his lap. The startled woman then wondered if her brother had just thrown the guy against the wall, seeing his anger. Her brother insisted, "What unknown guy?" adding she shouldn't act like that with some stranger. The young woman casually explained her head just happened to land in the guy's lap, much to the disguised creature's annoyance. The annoyed demon then muttered that he was tired and had actually been thinking about stroking the prince's stomach. Her brother, utterly bewildered, demanded if she was really that close to him and if she had actually been stroking his belly. The worried sister insisted it wasn't that guy, but Reed, and anyway, it was an animal's stomach. But her brother still hated the thought of this other guy. The guy in disguise looked confused as her brother yelled, asking who he thought this animal really was, while the demon lamented not petting the prince's belly. She thinks about the cat form she wants to pet, and how she'd love to bury her face in its fluff. The creature, in its small form, just gives a sassy humph. Her brother stares, dark energy swirling, wondering if this is that cat demon? Did he just see it smile? Meanwhile, the little demon thinks how his elder sister really knows how to pick him, wondering if the guy is her lover. Both she and her brother freeze, totally stunned, as the small cat demon actually speaks out loud. Her brother stared in disbelief, the word lover ringing in his mind. Sitting up with dark energy swirling, the young man commented his sister just brought a guy home, leaving her confused. Then her eyes bulged. She saw two little cats, one wishing her good luck. A sudden idea sparked in the worried woman's mind. Rubbing vigorously on a giant white floof, she demanded it reveal if it was Wolfgang the dog, not the cat. The maid, sweating nervously, hears that Wolfgang is being washed outside, and the little cat demon smugly adds, it's because his fur felt too hot. The young man, looking suddenly serious with dark energy swirling, seems to have realized something important about the guy standing near his sister. Reaching out to touch his face gently, the worried sister asks the transformed creature, "Who are you?" Totally confused, as she gently touches his cheek, the little cat demon pops up on her shoulder, adding to the bizarre chaos around them. The little cat demon, perched casually, smirks and drops the bombshell, accusing the maid of playing dumb because she totally knew that was the real Prince Blair, right? The worried woman utterly panicked, flailing dramatically as the little cat demon watched, and her brother looked strangely serious. A sudden exclamation followed, as something nearby seemed to straighten up in surprise. Meanwhile, Reed gently dried the giant fox, his nephew asking about a scream heard earlier while the girl wanted to brush the dog. He awkwardly held large scissors, telling the giant creature to please hold still while he cut its nails. The humiliated demon thought obeying a human was absolutely awful, even when it was the king's order, as something snapped. They were both petting the giant fluffy creature, and the young woman happily declared his fur felt super soft, though her friend warned her not to pull too hard or he'd get angry. The poor thing was flipped onto its back, looking utterly distressed while he poked at it, and the tiny demon smirked, calling human children weak. Meanwhile, that smaller creature just grinned, asking if someone was good at enduring before ridiculously chanting about "Your Majesty" and asking if this was some kind of trial. Then, the big, fluffy animal was suddenly lifted upside down with a yell of relief, internally celebrating being saved as a kind voice announced he was going to play and bathe in the sun. Suddenly, a terrifying face loomed, sharp teeth bared, looking utterly shocked by something in the sudden darkness. That strange, dark presence is back, the creature thinks. It's His Majesty's power. Meanwhile, the temperature drops drastically, making the young man shiver and feel cold. "Wolf!" the friend yells out in surprise as the large, fluffy creature suddenly dashes away, disappearing from sight. What in the world is happening? The young man wonders as the white fox demon races off, realizing His Majesty is unleashing his powers. What in the world did I do? The young woman thinks to herself, a heavy wave of regret washing over her. Clutching herself, the distressed woman looks up at her friend, lost in thought after the chaotic display of power. The hero appeared by the tree. Prince grabbed her, pulling her up fast. Her brother screamed, totally lost why she. Ugh, the embarrassed student thought. Terrified. Stroking a prince's belly is totally perverted and definitely earns you execution. Her friend gasped, asking if she was okay. Noting her face was the color of pure regret. The disguised creature's face twisted with fierce intensity, maybe thinking about all the sadness around him. Meanwhile, the young man sat radiating dark energy, asking the guy what he'd done to his big sister. The guy exploded, yelling back, "What did you do?" As the brother's eyes widened in surprise, the enraged young man thrashed defensively on the floor as dark energy swirled around him. The worried woman just stared down at dark spatters on the floor, a grim reminder of what just happened. The maid gasps, eyes wide with sudden shock. The injured young man cries out, begging someone to stop whatever's happening. Bursting in, the worried woman shrieks, horrified by Prince Blair's injured face. Meanwhile, Glenn, the cat demon, grins and laughs, seemingly pleased with the chaos. The prince stares in utter disbelief, blood streaked across his injured face. Glenn, the cat demon in human form, lifts the panicked woman, claiming it's getting dangerous and telling her to calm down. She shrieked her brother's name, pure horror etched across her face at the escalating chaos. Her brother stood there, looking annoyed, complaining about being hurt and having his ears pulled, telling his big sis to just stay put. Meanwhile, Prince Blair, injured and grim-faced, decided he needed to hear some serious excuses from someone. Back at the sacred tree, a hand reached out and gripped the legendary holy sword, ready to pull it out. Glenn, the cat demon, held her tight, smugly noting how her brother's rage was growing, just as planned. As she worried about Brad and the prince, she yelled frantically that he was too reckless. What if Brad got punished for treason because of this? Glenn looked utterly confused. The smug cat demon grinned, ecstatic, declaring there wasn't anyone noble around except His Majesty, completely dismissing her fear. Her thoughts raced. Prince Blair would find out her brother was the Demon Lord. It would definitely get worse if things stayed like this. Biting down hard, the worried woman screamed at the creature holding her to let go, realizing with dread how incredibly complicated things were becoming. That creepy cat demon, Glenn, looked down with a smirk and called her my elder sister. But she just struggled against him, feeling pain, while the strange cat demon mused his methods weren't working at all because he was apparently a masochist. What? The little creature popped up behind her, telling her to look at some beautiful magic power as she just blinked, totally confused. Her brother, surrounded by creepy dark energy, declared it was almost time for the path to the demon world to reopen. Oh no. Standing over the pulsing darkness, he wondered who would come forth this time, the path to the demon realm opening wide. "What?" she shrieked at the cat demon in disguise. "Stupid! Tell him to stop!" He just asked if the wicked subordinates who came next would be stronger. "Brad, stop it!" she yelled desperately. "Calm down and let's talk about this." She knew she had to stop him, especially for Prince Blair's sake. Utter darkness surged. A clawed hand emerged, stating simply it followed His Majesty's commands, because it's a demon thing. Meanwhile, she begged the creature, "Let me go, Glenn. I beg you." Intense dark energy whooshed around the room, reflecting the pure rage contorting the young man's face, and there stood the cat demon Glenn, in his imposing, true form, surrounded by swirling shadows. Eleanor looks utterly freaked out, dark energy swirling as two terrifying figures arrive right then. A quiet, internal thought reveals a deep, hidden desire for strength. Memories surface of the young man being a weak child, constantly relying on his sister. Lying in bed, he feels frustrated, unable to help her carry their family's burdens. But now, his hand clenches, radiating energy, finally possessing the power he always longed for. The young man declares fiercely that he will crush anyone who tries to harm his big sister. His only purpose now is protecting her with all his power. He feels another voice inside him, realizing he doesn't need to hold back now. No longer the weak Brad he used to be. A voice reflects on the absurd hardships she's faced, admitting a long-held frustration about her life. Now, using this new power, he can finally protect his sister Eleanor, who has struggled so much, doing it all by himself. A kneeling figure looks back, acknowledging you, the person standing before them. The young man raged, demanding what someone had done to his sister, a confusing voice inside saying it felt like him, but wasn't. Then, a chilling realization. The voice wasn't someone else. It was him. The darker part, a shadowy figure of the young man emerged behind his form, a ghostly echo of his hidden power and intent. While he hesitated, wanting explanations, the darker presence screamed, "Kill him right away!" Impatient for violence, the aggressive voice gripped him. Utterly annoyed he'd hold back when that intruder dared hold Eleanor in his arms. The young man seethed, declaring nobody should ever touch Eleanor. It was utterly unforgivable. Dark energy surged around the guy, fueled by his thought that he just might kill this man. This was unforgivable chaos. This feeling was overwhelming. The young man felt his power peeling away, unsure what to do or how to hold it in. He felt himself becoming someone he wasn't, a terrifying thought. Realizing he was going to disappear completely. Clutching her brother's face, the worried woman pleaded desperately, "Keep it together! Brad!" Reeling from the impact, the disguised creature looks stunned and insists that kind of violence is totally uncalled for right now. The force of the young man's unexpected outburst sends the figure sprawling backwards onto the ground. Surrounded by dark energy, his eyes glowing fiercely, the boy transforms, emanating terrifying power. Seeing this terrifying display, the guy looks utterly horrified, questioning what on earth he has done. Collapsing to the floor, clutching his chest and coughing, the boy shrinks back to his weak state while his sister looks on in relief. Her brother looked utterly regretful, apologizing and admitting he'd messed things up again. Gently taking his hand and stroking his head, she simply reassured him that it was perfectly all right. Looking away slightly, the young man mused that actually Prince Blair hadn't done anything bad to him at all. His big sister's voice felt incredibly heartwarming and comforting. That scary, frightening part of him was finally fading away, he thought, realizing he was the one who had probably gotten a little inappropriate earlier. Worried, the young woman heard her brother and quickly insisted he calm down first. With a serene look, the handsome man declared that she was truly his light. A thought about checking Prince Blair's condition crossed her mind. Pulling the surprised young man along, she called out, apologizing to Grandpa and asking him to wait for an explanation. She told the confused guy to please look after Brad, leaving him there while he questioned her strange address. The annoying creature doubled over, coughing. An ancient figure appeared, calmly stating, "Certainly." The disguised being reacted with utter shock upon seeing him. There stood the imposing old figure, and the young man she'd just brought gaped, recognizing him instantly. Utterly bewildered by this unexpected reunion, he could only stammer out, "Whoa, why?" The small demon's eyes bugged out in utter shock, stammering out, "Mother?" and demanding why she was here. With a chilling smirk, the imposing, cloaked, cat-like figure confirmed, "That's right, Glenn. It's me. Your dear mother." Glenn's sweat dropped profusely, asking nervously if she was mad, and just couldn't figure out why she'd be angry. His mother simply tilted her head, giving him an unnervingly calm look as she questioned why she would possibly be mad. But then she laid it on him. He pushed her aside and jumped into the human world first, sending the small demon into a sweaty panic. His mother leaned in close, revealing a literal paw print indentation right on her forehead, yelling it was his footprint from when he stepped on her and demanding he look. Glenn's sweat dropped, weakly insisting it must be her imagination and that he certainly didn't step on her head on purpose. While she sniffed, still angry she'd left it untouched. "Oh." She stared him down, asking menacingly if he was actually implying that her version of events was somehow wrong. The intimidating figure then asked, with a furious glare, if he actually thought she was stupid, just because she was already 2,000 years old. "Nope," the panicked demon thought desperately. There was absolutely no way he'd ever think something that dumb. The cat demon pleads with his mother, saying she knows how much he was looking forward to seeing their king again. Despite his excitement, he apparently went and stepped right on her the moment the path to this world opened. Staring back furiously, his mother declares with a chilling grin that he was the one who caused that to happen to her face. The little demon looks totally flustered, explaining he just got lost in the excitement and didn't mean to step on her face. Suddenly, a harsh silence is enforced with a forceful strike, punishing the apologetic demon. The intimidating figure stepped hard on someone, furious they were robbed of seeing their beloved king first. She shrieked, telling the smaller creature he totally deserved 1,000 deaths for that transgression. Someone simply spoke her name, Cornelia, addressing the powerful figure carrying a menacingly spiky mace. Then, with a sudden shift, the cat-like demon smiled lovingly, calling out to her, "My lord," with pure devotion. A familiar face from his past, Cornelia Grace, proudly introduced herself as his faithful nanny, happy to see her king after so long. His loving nanny, a furry creature, finally gets to squeeze her adorable king tight. Looking amused, his mother stands over the dejected small demon, ready to punish her foolish son. Yes, it seems someone absolutely amazing has truly arrived at last. Meanwhile, the kind maid gently comforts the distressed young man, seemingly unaware of the laughing presence nearby. The young woman looks utterly shocked, while her brother, sweating with fear, murmurs, "A demon?" Injured Prince Blair lunged forward, demanding the hero answer him, while the startled maid could only gasp his name. Glenn recounted how the demons suddenly emerged from under her brother during his strange outburst. He continued, explaining her brother is being referred to as "my lord," and also His Majesty by the creatures. The maid realized those titles are specially used to call the king. Stunned, she stared at the injured prince as the horrible truth solidified. "Don't tell her, but her brother is the demon lord." The injured prince stood, pain etched on his face after the chaotic outburst. Suddenly, he collapsed into her arms, prompting the worried woman to cry out his name. His hand poked her side, making her flinch and think a doctor was definitely needed now. Then, an ancient, strange figure appeared, telling her to calm down while holding her hand. The bizarre old woman repeated her demand to calm down, leaving the maid utterly bewildered. She couldn't hear him clearly, just feeling relief that her brother was all right amidst the chaos. Looking confused, she stammered, asking if he was okay and why she'd suddenly called him Grandpa. The disguised creature promptly started coughing violently, looking utterly distressed by her bizarre address. Meanwhile, the giant white fox suddenly appeared nearby, looking incredibly sparkly, but also wheezing. Sitting there, she noted how fluffy and sparkly he seemed. But the big guy quickly warned her not to comment on his appearance. The maid looks utterly shocked, hearing the prince was only put to sleep by someone named Lord Maynard. Getting his face rubbed vigorously by the giant white fox, the guy repeats the unsettling phrase, "Put to sleep?" The furry demon calmly explains that Lord Maynard put the injured man to sleep because he seemed like trouble. Her eyes widen further in pure horror. The weird demon added that guy might even erase his memory if necessary. Shaking the creature, the poor woman yells, completely freaking out, You can do that!" Wolfgang denies her question about a ritual, leaving her confused. Held by the furry creature, she's warned her brother will rage if she keeps holding the prince. The other demon grabs her, insisting she abandon that man and leave His Majesty to him. All right, the giant fox decides he'll carry the injured guy and put him in his room. Meanwhile, the intimidating cat mother declares she's got plenty more to say to Glenn. Prince Blair lay injured, face scratched and eyes half closed, clearly suffering after the magical chaos. Seeing his state, the maid looked on with genuine concern, her earlier panic giving way to worry. Hold on. She realized she absolutely needed to wipe the blood off his wounds first, before anything else happened. A strange, gnarled hand reached out gently towards the injured young man, beginning to work some unexpected magic. With a soft glow, the strange hand touched the prince, magically tending to his injuries in that chaotic room. The poor prince lay still, his eyes glassy and fading, totally knocked out cold. The young woman, completely bewildered, heard the creature confirm it was indeed magic that took him down. That creepy old demon was apparently super skilled in magic and had served the king for ages. The ancient figure chuckled creepily, seemingly amused by the maid's stunned reaction to the revelation. Oh no, she thought, connecting the dots. If all this was true, what about what the creature said about erasing the prince's memory? The maid just nods, learning the memory wipe only goes so far. Only? The young woman asks, utterly confused why anyone would say that about erasing memories. The guy explains Maynard can erase memories, but not the feelings attached to them. So, what you mean is, the troubled maid begins, putting the pieces together. She realizes even if he forgets why, being sexually harassed means the prince will just hate her. The big fox demon thought erasing the memory might help, but warned the prince might still feel distrust towards her regardless. She looked worried, realizing the weird feelings of distrust he felt might actually stick around even if he forgot. If only he could just forget her pulling the stupid sword and the whole demon lord brother thing. That would totally make things easier, she thought. But he would forget everything about what happened, including the weird chaos with the demons and her brother. The young woman firmly argued her point, believing a difficult choice was absolutely necessary for the best outcome right now. Even though that's what she sincerely believed was the right thing to do, the young woman decided this was the only way, requesting Prince Blair's memory be erased to end everything peacefully. But despite believing it was for the best, she questioned why her heart hurt a little after making the decision. Looking at Prince Blair lying there, she wondered if the pain was just guilt towards him, or if something else was stirring inside her. From behind, the young man watched, shocked, asking if she was trying to pull that out. The young woman whipped around, her face utterly stunned by his sudden presence. Reaching out desperately, the prince yelled for her to wait before she ran off. His arm moved towards her, internally questioning why it was chasing after this girl. Grabbing her arm, the young man stared intently, asking who on earth she was. The prince woke up confused in a strange place. He wondered aloud, "I was asleep?" Staring at his hand, something felt off. Meanwhile, the worried maid hurried through the palace halls, knowing trouble waited. Her friend Reed looked thoughtful, the quiet morning punctuated by birdsong. Birds flew peacefully overhead. He just stood there, utterly confused. Everything felt distant and hazy. Beyond the window, the morning light felt dim and unfamiliar in this strange place. Prince Blair clutched his head, still trying to piece things together after waking up here. Just chilling, legs covered by some sort of blanket or fabric. A hand lifted a piece of intricately patterned fabric, maybe inspecting it before wearing. The guy in the cloak muttered something about Prince Blair apparently working as usual. Her head maid, glasses on point, casually asked if she'd already finished her business with Prince Blair, which she managed to deceive her about. Walking outside with a cheerful smile, the small cat demon following complained she was always so lucky and that things had worked out. The cat demon grumbles about his king summoning his mom, saying, "Well, excuse me." His dear mother retorts she didn't want to be summoned by him. "Thank you very much." Now a grumpy cat, he begs her to please stop calling herself that, muttering, "Ah, jeez." The young woman tells the cat demon it's totally because of his attitude, not just being the eldest son. The jinxed cat demon complains about his mom and an old general wanting tea with the king, muttering about having to escort someone now. The young man, seemingly recovered, says he was saved and won't be accused of treason. Apparently, the ancient demon erased the prince's memory of her pulling the holy sword, leaving the poor woman stunned. Right. The embarrassed student reflects, acknowledging it's true that Prince Blair doesn't remember her anymore. She thought that old grandpa wasn't scary at all, more like he needed someone to take care of him, while the cat demon following wished for a truly terrifying helper instead. When it comes to raw power, his dear mother looks pretty strong, a truly formidable figure indeed. The cat demon admits his mother is indeed powerful enough. Glenn's voice confirms his powerful mother can totally protect her brother, leaving the maid overjoyed she won't lose her job. She pumps her fist, declaring she'll do her best at work now, while the cat demon eyes her, totally unsure. A sweat drop rolls down the little cat demon's face. Doesn't she get anything? Yeah, if his super stubborn mom is on duty guarding the king, she'll just focus on her maid duties. The stressed-out woman finally realized that's why those two weirdos were sticking around. She had to live with them now, and suddenly, their table was absolutely piled with incredible food. The annoying cat demon beaming, welcoming his elder sister home. Meanwhile, the imposing mother demon happily promised their King Brad she'd cook amazing meals for him every single day from now on. But the powerful nanny insisted she'd handle everything perfectly, leaving the worried young woman frantically trying to explain their tiny house was way too crowded. Back at the messy table, the annoying cat demon sweetly offered her soup, urging his stressed elder sister to eat, but she clearly still wasn't having it. The young woman takes a bite of the demon-cooked food and is utterly shocked. It's incredibly delicious. Glenn cheerfully tells his elder sister to leave the chores to him while she focuses on work, while his mother is pleased she liked the food. Munching down the incredible food, the stressed-out woman agonizes. This is terrible because she really has to send them back now. The maid, facing the imposing mother demon, awkwardly states it would be troublesome if they stayed here much longer. A heavy silence falls as the imposing demon simply stands there, not arguing, just waiting. The stressed-out maid awkwardly suggested the imposing demon and her crew maybe just rent a house nearby, citing her tiny two-bedroom place. Was she mad? The demon turned her head slowly, a chillingly unimpressed movement following that bold suggestion. The worried woman shrieked in terror at the demon's sudden silent turn. Oh no, was she mad? Flailing her hands defensively, she desperately begged the creature to please just calm down and not resort to violence right now. Despite the tension, a tray with a rattling teapot and cups sat ready. Tea time, demon or not. The imposing demon just smiled, stating she still had dishes to wash, which wasn't exactly reassuring given the tension. Then the small cat demon politely handed the maid the tea tray, asking his elder sister to share it with Sir Maynard. She awkwardly agreed, telling herself to just go chat with the ancient demon, managing a strained smile. Slumped over, the poor woman was utterly spent, while the old demon trembled nearby, thinking he couldn't possibly win against his new boss. The maid wondered if the old demon would even understand her if she tried talking to him, while he just calmly sipped his tea. The ancient demon looked utterly bewildered by her bold suggestion, just muttering, She leaned down closer, sighing, and told him again she simply could not hear what he was saying. He tried to object, but she adamantly repeated her claim that she absolutely could not hear him. End of story. The teacup sat quietly between them, oblivious to the ridiculous conversation unfolding. Putting on brave faces, both the maiden and the ancient demon forced a smile, pretending everything was just dandy. Collapsed face down, the overwhelmed woman resignedly thought this whole bizarre situation was truly impossible. A heavy sense of gloom settled over everything. Still sitting there, the tiny cat demon sitting on her head seemed to mimic her despair, while she muttered he was being stupid. The stressed-out young woman just sat slumped on the bed, sighing deeply, completely exhausted by her new housemates. The little creature perched on her head grumbled. He didn't like this room arrangement, but his mother forced him to watch her all day. The tiny creature perched atop her head just thought how fun it still was messing with her. The elder sister. The bored cat demon then complained that guarding her was totally boring, suggesting she go complain to his mother about it. But then the tiny creature grumbled that mother and elder sister were mouthfuls and demanded to be called by name instead, threatening to rub a tummy if not obeyed. A quiet moment settled over the young man, his face thoughtful, looking off into the distance. Meanwhile, with the little creature still on her head, the young woman wondered what his mother, Cornelia Grace, actually thought of her. That little demon thought his terrifying mother knew everything, and likely knew he'd pulled the sword, right? His elder sister realized the mother demon was so perceptive, she'd noticed the smallest change in her brother. The weird cat demon wore an unsettling, smug expression as he watched. A distinct feeling of distrust washed over the creature, making him aware of her wariness. Meanwhile, her brother insisted he didn't need medicine anymore. But the worried woman looked uncertain, while the small demon observed. Even when the young woman tried to smile, her eyes held a deep sadness and worry, showing how stressed she really was. The tiny cat perched on the maid's head wondered why she wasn't acting scared of him, but admitted he was actually her brother's enemy when it came to their terrifying mother. Suddenly, the maid shrieked in surprise, yelling, "Grandpa!" and demanding to know when the silent, tea-sipping ancient demon had even gotten there. The maid forced a bright smile, telling the bewildered old demon she simply couldn't understand a single word he was saying, even as he tried desperately to mention Cornelia Grace. The worried woman gasped, startled, as the large fox demon lying on the floor finally managed to mutter something important. It was about Cornelia Grace. The maid yells at the annoying creature about constantly appearing, while the fox mutters she's enduring for her king. She blinks, utterly confused, repeating the word enduring. What on earth is that supposed to mean? The fox talks to the ancient demon about the maid, asking if it's because she's his elder sister, getting a thoughtful response. The young woman looks utterly bewildered, hearing they neutralize each other somehow. Neutralize? The demons think she chose this mess for her brother's sake, since she and the king weaken each other just by being together. The ancient demon and his furry companion wondered why they wouldn't prefer Bradley to be as strong as the true demon lord. Wolfgang, in his human form, voiced concern about humans noticing his majesty if his demon power got too high. That's true, the maid agreed, worried that if the demon lord was discovered here, humans would try to subdue him, especially without his army. The little cat demon casually remarked that the demon lord himself didn't actually want humans to perish anyway. His companion, the fluffy white fox, insisted it should be obvious just by looking at Bradley Sama that he desired neither conquest nor destruction of the human world. Hearing her brother only wanted to live peacefully with her, the young woman looked concerned. The ancient demon Maynard and the fox creature explained their long service as vassals, here now to serve their king. Turning away, the maid heard Cornelia Grace mentioned, but the tiny cat demon near her ear piped up, "Huh? What about me?" The white fox creature, Wolfgang, stared intently, declaring to the stunned woman that she eased their king's heart. The worried woman's eyes widened. That's why, the creature stressed, she must never forget she is the demon lord's support. The ancient demon states they won't lay a finger on her unless their king says otherwise. The demon kneels respectfully with the other creature as someone steps nearby, seemingly dismissing their words entirely. Suddenly, the cat creature jolts, reacting sharply to something unexpected happening right then. In just a nightgown, the young woman spins and bolts from the doorway, utterly shocked by something behind her. Meanwhile, the young man in bed stares, utterly startled, as a new, imposing, cat-headed figure looms beside him. Her brother was startled awake by the sudden appearance of a strange, powerful being right on his bed. Startled by her reaction, he called out, asking, "Big sis, what on earth was wrong?" Tears welling, the young woman thought about Brad always supporting her, doing everything for her. Facing him, Eleanor swore she'd protect her brother from now on too, much to his stunned surprise. As the chaos unfolded, the imposing cat-headed demon calmly told the clinging maid not to be so overwhelmed. She tells them she totally gets how much her brother means to them, but keeping them here will cause a massive problem when someone inevitably notices them. Facing the imposing mother demon, the young woman declares she has to be clear now and begs them to leave. Appealing to their shared concern for her brother, she asks if for his sake, they won't just return to the demon world. The ancient demon mother stares, echoing the question about returning to the demon world for Bradley. "Eee!" the worried woman yelped, as the little creature calmly stated they weren't leaving while the hero was with the demon lord. Besides, the young woman heard. They were the demon lord's servants. Their loyalty wasn't debatable. And even if someone noticed, the demons added, they could just erase memories, asking why they should listen to her demands anyway. Well, that's true, but the distressed woman stammered, then suggested they just ask her brother what he thought about this. Eh? So that's what you say? She shrieked in utter shock as her brother, surrounded by sparkle power, cheerfully welcomed the idea of the demons staying. Grabbing her brother, the worried woman frantically asked how they'd fit everyone. But the young man just happily declared the demons' cooking was amazing. But someone gave her a gentle push, suggesting she should get sleep for her new job tomorrow. While she felt totally ignored and annoyed, her frustration exploded, a silent scream against the absurdity of having demons crash at her place. That little cat demon then piped up, telling her it was rude to get carried away, being both a hero and the demon lord's sister, and especially rude calling his mother that. Time passed, settling over the quiet rooftops of the town. The annoying cat demon finds guard duty utterly boring. Guarding her is annoying. He's stuck here now, tiring chaos, but putting the sword back helped. Turns out the weird old demon erased everything, so Prince Blair completely forgot what went down. And because he forgot, her big secret about yanking out the legendary blade is safe. Gotta keep the neighbors from finding out about the demons. Yeah, she'll totally handle that somehow. Peaceful coexistence with demons? Sure, no problem, right? This fancy document announced her official promotion to high-ranking maid, a title earned through hard work, and 0 demon summoning. As she reviewed the papers, a stern figure warned her not to be careless, leaving the maid utterly startled. Clutching the paper, the surprised maid gasped, suddenly in charge of Prince Blair. Standing nervously, the high-ranking maid introduced herself, her heart pounding like crazy. Sitting at his desk, the handsome young man studied a paper, his heart also unexpectedly pounding. A voice requested the embarrassed student show her face to His Highness. The young man stared intently, a silent question hanging in the air as he awaited her presence. The young man's eyes registered a flicker of surprise or deep thought. Standing before him, the maid heard him state directly, "I'm counting on you." She admitted to herself later that she'd been momentarily worried by his skeptical look just then. But observing him now, the young woman concluded, as expected, he'd totally forgotten everything about her. Eleanor closed the door behind her, relieved she wouldn't be immediately kicked out for all the chaos. Someone unseen quietly complimented the old demon on a successful job. A palace staffer announced her assignment to Prince Blair's quarters, telling her to hurry it up. Her first job was assisting at the night training grounds, which she agreed to get right on. The staff member handed her something, explaining the water had run out and she needed to fetch some. With a strained smile, the new maid asked if Prince Blair himself would be drinking the water she brought. A palace staffer tells the maid to hurry up bringing the water because Prince Blair will be drinking it when they take a break. Ordered around by the knights, the stressed young woman sighs, agreeing to bring the water right away while the staffer says he's counting on her. Her attention shifts as she spots Prince Blair among the group. The prince is swarmed by admiring knights, and the maid mentally gripes about the increasing number of meatheads around him, wondering if he's an idol. She thinks, even though she's a maid, she's a girl struggling to breathe after working. Couldn't those meatheads at least look her way? Bringing the water she was ordered to fetch, the maid sees knights practically fighting each other to pick up something for the prince. She sets down the water while others still clamor, now over-wiping the sweat off his face, just totally ignoring her. Despite the general adoration, one knight gives the exhausted maid a quiet, "Good job," but she thinks the others still haven't even looked her way, the meatheads. But then something gets tossed on her head, and the furious woman wonders if people could please stop doing that carelessly. She looks out at the training ground, suspecting that good-natured knight did it on purpose, and wonders if the prince might have even ordered it. Prince Klaus is apparently super proud of his staff, but totally snaps at anyone he dislikes. Hence all the servant turnover. The head maid thinks Prince Blair isn't so bad, just stressed thinking about the crown prince. Ignores rumors he's a bloodless demon. Oh boy, the head maid is furious about the lies and curses Prince Klaus, while a nervous maid whispers she probably shouldn't have said his name out loud. The maid, talking to the annoying demon in disguise, agrees with her head maid after spending time with the prince. The annoying guy remembers Prince Blair showing lots of expressions, thinking he was actually more cute than scary back then. Prince Blair was utterly embarrassed, calling her elder sister with a bright red face. Sighing, the young woman regretted her rudeness, thinking he was just that annoying cat demon. Pulling her cloak tighter, the maid thought, no way would she have laid on his lap intentionally. From his perspective, she was completely bizarre, yet he surprisingly just let her stay there. The worried woman felt so bad. Perhaps just stabbing herself was the only suitable apology for bothering him so much. She thinks she knows the real Prince Blair after all those strange encounters. A strange, ticklish feeling washes over her, leaving her flustered and wondering what it is. Hidden under a cloak, the annoyed woman hears someone ask her to stitch theirs up too. Then another hand appears, asking her to please stitch theirs too since it's also torn. Her face contorts in fury under the hood, cursing those meat-headed imperial guards for her troubles. She declared the challenge accepted. Her life with her cute brother was on the line. The young woman dramatically vowed she would bring the needle and thread immediately. The prince watched Eleanor huffing away, finding the newcomer's glare quite amusing. Meanwhile, Prince Blair questioned someone, asking if he was using the maid again. The man addressed, Oliver, simply looked back. Oliver, holding his cup, looked at Prince Blair and remarked on meeting him here, adding that whoever she was, it'd be a real pain if that girl just quit now. He then mused that cornering people reveals their true nature. But hey, there are totally bad people out there. The young man, however, just sighed, finding that maid a little short-tempered, which got a quiet laugh from his companion. Oliver, still smiling slightly, pressed his point. For the prince's safety, it was wise to be cautious of newcomers, even if they were just a maid, acknowledging Blair's objection. His expression turned serious again, as he stressed that if anything happened to His Highness, the Queen and Crown Prince would be absolutely devastated. The young man just stared intently, his thoughts clearly miles away. Oliver started to make a point about her, his voice calm, but that maid definitely didn't seem like someone who could hide how mad she was, Oliver thought. Oliver smiled, agreeing she wore her heart on her sleeve, adding the prince could surely handle her. Yeah, the young man thought with a quiet laugh. She was definitely pretty pissed off right now. The young woman slumped under the shelter, starting the annoying stitching task requested by the guards. Two figures stood waiting nearby, clearly expecting her to work quickly on their repairs as well. Someone nearby found the whole thing amusing, chuckling that she really could have just said no to them. One of the guys waiting commented that now she'd be stuck sewing everyone's clothes if she did it here. The young man standing with him just looked thoughtful, silently processing the observation. Wrapped in cloths by the guards, the poor woman sat trapped and uncomfortable, clearly not enjoying her new job. She was left alone with the pile of fabric, completely exhausted and lost in weary thought. Frustration boiling over, the maid huffed and clenched her fists, utterly fed up with this ridiculous sewing task. Meanwhile, the trainer smiled knowingly, telling the prince nearby that she'd never finish in time at this rate, and they should get back to training. The young man's expression suddenly shifted, clearly struck by some unexpected thought or realization. That guy, Oliver, looked totally pleased with himself, holding a drink and something that looked like a sword. Meanwhile, the prince just couldn't shake how strange that girl was, even meeting her today. Sitting and stitching, the annoyed woman thought the prince had always been this ridiculously amusing, saying his name like a question. Turning back to Oliver, the young man just told him to give her a break for a bit. Seeing her there, The prince had a weird feeling he just needed to keep the maid close by for some reason. Oliver told the prince he didn't mind if he was strict with her. Just maybe don't push it too hard. Just don't tell that to everyone, the guy muttered, looking away slightly as the prince walked off. The guy stroked his chin thoughtfully, appearing a little bothered by the conversation. Someone nearby found that declaration about not telling everyone truly odd to hear. Dong! Dong! The large bells of the palace began to ring out across the grounds. As the palace bells ceased ringing, life continued in the town square below. People bustling about at market stalls under the open sky. The imposing stone walls of the palace stood silent against the horizon, looking down on the kingdom, seemingly unaffected by the chaos within. Meanwhile, somewhere else entirely, 4 powerful figures sat around a table, creatures gathered for a serious discussion. One formidable armored being leaned forward, eyes narrowed, asking the others directly if anyone had an opinion on the matter at hand. A smaller, cat-like figure in black declared it was absolutely impossible and far too early to grant His Majesty's presumed desires, stating she was firmly against it. The cat demon in the black suit, smirking confidently, declared it was too late if anything happened, and the other demon agreed. Arriving home, the maid announced her return, only to be greeted by a strange, furry figure asking about the ancient demon. "Ah, whoa!" the young woman gasped, utterly startled to find the 3 strange demons sitting around her table like it was a boardroom meeting. Facing the surprised maid, the cat demon smirked, while the furry one sat quietly, waiting for her reaction to their presence. Looking utterly bewildered, the distressed woman stammered as the cat demon explained it was totally just an emergency meeting, you know? One of the demons, looking totally exhausted, drops a bombshell. His Majesty actually wants to work outside. What? The worried woman blinked, realizing that's what all the emergency meeting fuss was about. Apparently, he just wants to support his family. Now he's healthy and seriously, what's so wrong with that? He'd even light the lamp, but the maid slammed the ground, yelling this was absolutely terrible. What on earth was wrong with him? The annoyed creature yelled back. The king of the demon world working in the human world is completely unheard of. She just awkwardly responded, huh. The big furry creature snarled, utterly outraged that their king might work for some random, unknown human. Both strange figures declared in unison that they absolutely could not accept this ridiculous idea. Their poor housemate, caught in the middle, calmly tried to mediate the argument, urging everyone to just settle down. She patiently explained that her brother is simply a human kid living a normal life here. But the fluffy creature argued he's still the demon lord. Then, the imposing cat mother chimed in, warning that despite reincarnation, he still possesses the power of the demon king who terrorized the human world. Glenn feels like her presence has suppressed something, and frankly, he finds it all a bit boring. The large demon asks the maid if letting the demon lord mingle with humans is dangerous, and she hesitantly agrees. But even so, the young woman thinks about her brother's determination despite the risks involved. Then her brother appears, face beaming with his usual warm smile, happily welcoming her home. She yells in surprise and distress. Her brother just popped into existence nearby with magic, giving her a heart attack. He looked at her, saying he'd been worried since she got home late. The young woman looked back, absolutely worn out, as her brother asked what happened, noting even her hair was a mess. Then he tensed, looking furious, demanding to know if that Prince Blair guy had dared do something to her. Oh no. The maid awkwardly explained she was just a little careless on her first day as a high-ranking maid, while her thought bubble shows exaggerated chaos. Her brother looked at her thoughtfully, murmuring that yeah, he could totally see that happening. He told her he would work so she could stay home, but she was still worried about him. Clinging to her, the young man explained he couldn't protect her at the palace and worried about her safety there. Sitting by his bed, She mused he used to be too weak to even get up, yet now said such protective things. He held her tight, declaring fiercely that he would protect his big sister, and she just softly murmured his name. His earnest desire to protect her filled her heart with overwhelming happiness. But something about his protective words made her feel weirdly flustered. Nah, she told herself. He was just a growing boy. Of course he'd get taller. But seriously, since when? Whoa, how did I just notice this? She gasped internally, shocked by her own absent-mindedness. Meanwhile, the annoying cat demon piped up, telling His Majesty his sister seemed kinda down. Glenn, the young man sighed. Don't you dare laugh. And the little cat demon, now back in his annoying furry form, muttered about the prince doing something to her again, before shushing himself. The young man insisted he was fine, but added unsettlingly he might accidentally destroy the palace. Yikes. Amidst the strange gathering, her brother ordered Glenn to seat his sister, internally noting his annoyance about Prince Blair. Turning to the worried woman with a slight smile, the young man brought up their earlier conversation, his expression still unsettling. Seated at the table, the young man smiled cheerfully, while his sister looked worried, talking with the ancient demon. He stared, eyes wide in pure shock, gasping that he couldn't, as his worried sister pointed out something strange about his hand. All right, the stressed woman finally agrees, while her brother wonders how siblings are supposed to work this out. Meanwhile, the ancient demon muses that the young man has changed so incredibly much. Sitting up a bit, the young woman beams, ready to discuss the big topic. Her brother actually working. So, the young man suggests, why not start by getting a job over at Reed's place? Both he and the demon look utterly shocked, demanding why on earth he'd work specifically at Montag's. The smug cat demon told the maid they were against their big sister's idea because, well, it was about her. Bright and early the next morning, the young man happily greeted the big fluffy fox, asking if he was there after his sister left for work. Good boy, the young man chirped, happily walking the giant fox on a leash, telling him they'd brush his hair, much to the creature's annoyance. Later, the fluffy creature looked completely defeated, hearing from his cheerful master that they would be taking another walk that evening. The maid smiled, knowing her friend loved animals, while the large demon internally lamented being treated entirely like a dog on a leash by him. You must be joking, the cat demon in human form scoffed, insisting as a cat he totally cleans himself and she shouldn't ask his companion to bathe him too. Meanwhile, the fluffy creature groaned, utterly humiliated by the human and refusing to be captured and cleaned spotlessly like that. Huh? The young woman shrieked, utterly baffled by something just said, demanding it be done without getting something. Well, she thought, relieved, maybe working at Reed's place first would be good. A gentle way for him to get used to the real world. She outlined her plan. First, he'd just help out for a short time, like a trial period, simple as that. The young man excitedly explained his plan, while his sister, smiling gently, urged him to listen carefully. He insisted his body was fine now, and he could work, grab a job, and finally earn some money to help her. But her face hardened, grabbing his head firmly as she yelled, he absolutely must not underestimate what real work entails. She lectured the wide-eyed boy about the struggles of getting a paid job with no experience, reminding him even she worked her butt off as an apprentice. The young woman nodded sternly, declaring, "Good." Satisfied, he finally understood. The young man cheerfully announced the meeting concluded, dismissing everyone, though the demon beside him seemed less than thrilled, muttering about having no choice. His expression shifted, a flicker of surprise crossing the young man's face at the meeting's outcome, or perhaps something else. Someone quietly spoke the ancient demon's name, catching the attention of the sleepy-looking figure. Across the table, one figure seemed to have dozed off completely, snoring away, while their companion looked slightly exasperated, asking if he was sleeping. In other words, someone asked the handsome young man directly, could he please hire her brother, Bradley, to work at his shop? She explained that hiring actually meant her brother would apprentice under him, not get a full job. The worried sister admitted her request was a bit much, but having him work beside her friend felt safe. And Reed just smiled, saying he'd be glad to help. She was relieved, thanking Reed and thinking he'd be his usual kind self, while a small, mischievous voice nearby wanted to watch over the big day. Early next morning, she apologized for leaving him alone, saying she had to hurry to work, and the young man said it was okay. Clutching her brother tightly, the worried sister told him to do his best, giving him a reassuring hug before leaving. The young man agreed, looking quite happy. His friend burst into tears, asking why he cried. Wiping tears, the kind man said he just copied her. The young man, smiling and a little flushed, had been thinking that his friend had finally recovered enough to be able to work. Overcome with emotion, the kind friend then began to sob, declaring just how incredibly moved he was by it all. The young man, working at the shop, asks if they're tired, offering help with heavy items and asking where something goes. Sweating slightly, the inexperienced young man asks what comes next, then gets told to put the goods up on the shelf. Looking concerned, the young man quietly asks Reed, wondering if he's in pain anywhere right now. The fluffy creature, looking totally chuffed, claims a dozen tiny bottles are absolutely no problem for him. Nope. An observer, perhaps a demon in disguise, thinks admiringly, "Your Majesty looks so cool wearing that apron." Reed's friend looked teary again, while the big furry demon thought His Majesty was totally adorable, wondering why. Meanwhile, another demon, an imposing woman, dramatically covered her face, wailing about her king, while someone nearby noted she was crying too. Still distraught, she clenched her fists, ranting furiously about wanting to burn a box and panicking her king might trip. By the window, the big white fox creature sweat-dropped, internally urging someone to calm down, while the other demon wailed louder off-panel. A voice from inside the shop warned the big beast that making such a fuss would get him kicked out, since dogs weren't allowed inside anyway. Even so, his formidable mother frets, "I'm worried," while her furry companion just watches. One of the servants frets, "What if His Majesty loses confidence touching humans' flimsy things, or turns this minuscule bottle to dust?" "Ugh! Wolfgang!" Someone yells his name and grabs him fiercely, maybe pulling him away. Shaking the large, fluffy creature frantically, she orders him to quickly tell the old demon to shield everything in the store with magic. Meanwhile, the young man just puts things on the shelf, noting it's getting noisy outside right now. The young man politely thanked the customer, grateful for the excellent purchase they made. Apparently, this person had come in looking displeased, but left smiling because of Reed's great service. Other customers looked really happy too, buying lots of things, and her brother was amazed by it all. The inexperienced student quietly thought about Reed, deciding he was genuinely awesome. He reflected that their kind friend had always supported him and his sister with that same smile. While helping carry stock, the young man announced he'd decided something and wanted to ask him about it. The kind friend covered his mouth, utterly flustered, stammering, "What? Me?" Still blushing, the young man confessed he always thought they looked just like a married couple whenever he saw them together. Red-faced and sweaty, the shocked young man begged him to stop, asking why he was suddenly saying that. He stuttered, asking what clearly meant, while the other boy mentioned his sister was at that age where things should be said clearly. Red-faced, he stutters, confessing something important. He feels it's about her, as his friend prompts, "Yes?" A heavy, awkward silence hangs between the blushing boys. Suddenly a hand shoots out and grabs a broom nearby. His dad comments on Reed's flustered state while someone frantically dashes off to sweep outside. His uncle sighed, calling him hopeless about Miss Eleanor, asking what that even meant. The older man mused that despite being popular, perhaps she was why he had no romance rumors, asking if that was truly the case. Meanwhile, the young man swept away vigorously, wishing they would just get together because it would be a problem if they didn't. Looking back at the older man, her brother dramatically declared that if it wasn't for Reed, his big sis wouldn't be able to marry, prompting a thoughtful, Reed's dad argued back, asking why that would be so. Eleanor is cheerful and hardworking. Surely a good man is willing to marry her. His brother declared he wouldn't give his precious sister to anyone other than Reed, adding with bias that she was the prettiest anyway. A sinister smile spread across the young man's face, thinking the very idea disgusted him and letting out a creepy little laugh. The older man looked thoughtful, finally realizing something important with a quiet, "Whew, I see." The young man struggled internally, admitting he sometimes didn't even want to give her to Reed. The thought, just disgusting. But maybe that wasn't a problem, his brother mused. He didn't like humans much anyway, and would just protect her himself forever. His brother confessed he wouldn't let Big Sis marry anyone other than Reed, totally shocking her friend's dad. The young man just grinned that creepy smile, saying not to worry and that he kinda liked his uncle. Reed's dad apologized for his son being timid, but the apprentice just calmly said there was no need for apologies. His friend, looking flustered, mused hopefully that maybe he and Eleanor could actually end up married after all, and the apprentice smiled warmly, declaring that's precisely why he also needed to support his new boss. Seeing his son flustered, Reed's dad tells him to do his best. Someone's rooting for him, probably Eleanor. All right, for now, one of the characters thought, perhaps agreeing to something small-scale. Then the older man turned to Brad, patting his back and telling the young man he needed to do his best, too. Reed just kept sweeping hard, sighing heavily, looking totally confused about why he reacted like that. The young man just stood there quietly, looking completely bewildered by his friend's sudden weirdness. Brad beamed, completely happy to help out his friend at the shop. From inside the shop, someone heartily responded with a booming, "Yes, sir!" Back at the sprawling palace, life continued, grand and demanding. The exhausted maid carried a huge basket, worried if her brother was doing his best at work. Other maids were amazed, asking how she finished all that sewing from yesterday, plus today. The exhausted maid, eyes hidden, wondered what on earth she was supposed to tackle today while lugging a huge basket. With a serene smile, the head maid announced she must first return every single item in that mountain of laundry to its owner. Just staring at the ridiculous pile, the poor woman wondered if maybe doing the same job as yesterday wouldn't just be easier, right? Maybe not. Tapping footsteps sounded nearby as she silently grumbled that none of her seniors seemed interested in being friendly anyway. Struggling under the massive weight, she staggered past someone, dreading another day battling those annoying meat-headed knights again. The young man looked thoughtful, deep in contemplation about, well, something important. Meanwhile, the poor maid struggled under a mountain of laundry, thinking that guy Oliver just kept piling on the work even after all that stitching nonsense. The prince glanced towards her, wishing he could help her with that ridiculous load, but knew he couldn't. Doing anything obvious with everyone watching would just land her in trouble, getting accused of being a burden on the royals. Wait, the prince helps a commoner with work? Someone else reacted, utterly bewildered by the very idea. The young man sighs, thinking what a bother this is, even though he just wants to help people in trouble while looking at the maid. Clutching her face, the maid feels like such an unreliable servant and worries she made Prince Blair carry her ridiculous load. Meanwhile, the guy, Oliver, smirked, understanding the prince's need and predicting more tests for the new maid. The maid gasps in surprise as Prince Blair sighs again, muttering that even helping her is a bother for him. With an ugh, the poor woman loses her footing, tripping over the massive pile of laundry she's carrying. Oh no! Tripping over the giant laundry pile, the maid screams about a carpet that totally wasn't there, while someone nearby groans. The prince looks back at the chaotic scene, a weary or maybe even slightly amused expression on his face amidst the dust. Sent flying head over heels, the poor woman muses that she thought she was trying so hard, but just couldn't escape her ridiculous fate. She thinks dramatically that her life totally deserves a cruel death right now for this public humiliation. Meanwhile, one maid despairs about her own failures, having rubbed it too hard. As the tripping maid realizes with horror, she tripped over her own abandoned broom. The young woman sighed dreamily, thinking Prince Blair would look absolutely beautiful in those training clothes. Just then, his hand reached out, grabbing the enormous pile of laundry she was hauling. He reacted with a quiet, ugh, clearly finding the task incredibly annoying despite his helping hand. Caught off guard, the maid yelped, surprised but determined not to fall down with the ridiculous weight. There they stood, side by side, the worried woman gripping her basket and the prince pulling his with visible effort, both loaded down. Basket, confusion, what's happening? Peeking over basket, startled look. Guy looks shocked by something, and so, someone carried the poor woman like luggage across the rough, shadowed ground. Holding hands, her face showed a mix of feelings as bizarre memories swirled, wondering what it all meant. But the young man found himself feeling a sudden, unexpected swell of complicated emotions. Struggling under the massive laundry pile, the young woman mumbled a question to the guy who just appeared before her. Then, reaching down, he started helping her pick up the ridiculous amount of fabric. Soon after, they were heading towards the training grounds, loaded down with the massive bundles. He awkwardly tossed a section of the load onto her basket, looking less than thrilled about sharing the burden. Struggling under a massive laundry pile, the poor maid paused, dazed, as the young man she bumped into turned to face her. He looked back with a cool, princely expression, clearly not thrilled by the sudden collision. A quiet sigh escaped him. This unexpected encounter was proving quite bothersome. Gasping, the worried woman stammered that she would just go right ahead with her ridiculous load. Straining under the weight, Eleanor stumbled forward, yelling desperately, "Ah, I apologize, Prince Blair." The young man stood nearby, watching with a serious look. Spotting him, the struggling woman gasped, clutching her massive laundry basket. The prince just stood there, looking at her and chuckling slightly. Then he turned and walked away down the hall, leaving her to her impossible task. Meanwhile, back in town, the general store offered a friendly welcome after that palatial mess. At the shop, the young man in his apron looked thoughtful, admitting he did have a lot on his plate lately. His friend got teary, saying Eleanor would cry seeing him like this, while he just noted she worried about him more than himself. Apparently, the maid spent nights mending ripped clothes from the prince's quarters, working angrily with constant needle pricks. Up close, her fingers repeatedly got pricked by the needle as she worked tirelessly through the night. Slumped over the fabric pile, her face hidden in shadow, the stressed woman endured the endless, painful sewing task. Exhausted by her endless duties, the maid put away laundry, wishing for a single moment of peace. The young woman, utterly exasperated, asked the little cat demon how long he planned to keep acting like this. Growling, she told the annoying creature she was completely tired of seeing him and ordered him to go cause trouble somewhere else like he always did. Her hands worked on stitching something, resignedly insisting she had to finish the sewing task she'd been given. Holding the strange feline, she told him to stop rubbing on her clothes because his fur would stick, while he questioned his elder sister about her face. The worried young woman looked away, blushing furiously, as someone asked if she was bothered by what Prince Blair said earlier. The annoying cat demon mused the prince is difficult, according to rumors, but insisted he was worried about something else entirely. Looking utterly dejected, the stressed-out maid heard the small creature predict she'd totally get her termination letter after only a week. Perched on a palace window, the cat demon wondered aloud what exactly about the young woman the prince disliked, while she fretted about that dreaded letter. What short temper! The flustered maid sputtered as the annoying creature listed possibilities like her carelessness or even her stupid face. She insists she sewed this mountain of clothes with so much patience, blushing from the effort. The maid just looked tired and worn out from it all. That feeling lingered. Maybe she just wasn't good enough after all. The young man tells the maid she doesn't have to follow him to the training grounds anymore. Prince Blair tells the surprised young woman he's heading to the office, and she should go back first. Hesitating, she just couldn't figure out why he'd say that now. Then he simply walked away, his footsteps echoing down the long hall. Clutching the giant laundry pile, she gasped, wondering if she'd done something wrong. But hey, she did work hard today fixing things. But he stopped and turned back, leaving the young woman confused, asking why he'd paused like that. Later, slumped and crying, the miserable woman heard the small cat demon say being gloomy really wasn't her style. Clutching her dress tightly, the worried woman panicked, wondering why she was getting laid off so quickly. The little cat demon nearby suggested it was because she threw those training shirts on the prince's head. Looking up with a frown, the tiny creature simply confirmed, perhaps as a possible reason. But the distraught maid protested, while her feline companion insisted she neglected duties for endless sewing instead, making him look incompetent. Turns out, while she hesitated wondering if maids could refuse, the knights just dumped training clothes on her for stitching anyway. The maid sighed, calling those palace guards bullies with a friendly face. The annoying cat demon scoffed, telling her she was weak-willed, not generous. The tiny creature shrieked, warning her there were humans even worse than demons. The annoying cat demon worried aloud, saying those people might be using her to buy pointless things. Even her scolding the cat demon, she mused tiredly, felt natural by now. The little cat creature, ever blunt, states he hates seeing anyone else bullied, even if he enjoys picking on his own family, insisting she wasn't being teased by the prince. The maid looked flustered as the twisting cat demon told her not to be a boring doormat. She believed Prince Blair would appreciate her efforts. If only she could manage to do this annoying job properly. Huddled over the piles of fabric, the weary woman resolved that despite everything, Prince Blair would see she could do the work right. Looking back with a serious expression, the prince simply told her she wouldn't need to come to the training grounds anymore. Someone just wondered if she was actually completely useless after all. But hey, haven't you forgotten? The tiny creature pointed out. He saw the king and the legendary blade, even if he doesn't remember now. Sure, I know. She sighed sadly, acknowledging this was a perfect excuse to avoid getting tangled up with that guy and just be a maid. Yeah, I know, but... she mumbled, tearing up, because honestly, being disliked wasn't weird when the prince's messed up memories probably blamed her. Then, the guy who looked like the prince grabbed her arm, anguished, calling himself a traitor for ditching the legendary sword and his hero duty. She wonders if earning back trust after messing up with the prince is just impossible for her. His words echo, telling her she won't need to follow him to the training ground anymore, leaving her wishing for just one chance to make up for yesterday's disaster. Meanwhile, the ancient demon calmly sips his tea, utterly unbothered by her palace troubles, as she stands awkwardly nearby. Suddenly, she's assaulted by the smell of a training shirt, yelling about how absolutely awful and stinky it is. "He's here!" someone cheerfully announces as Oliver, the Ivili's new knight, arrives, confirming his presence to the bewildered new maid with a laugh. The annoyed maid snaps at the knight, asking if he's some kind of dog for complaining about a smell. He just laughs. While the furious young woman yells he clearly underestimates his own stench and shouldn't hurl things, she looks down at the patched shirt in her hands, letting out a weary sigh. The patched fabric felt heavy, a testament to the endless task. "What?" the worried woman shrieks, recognizing this patched shirt and stain from just this morning. The maid grabbed the ruined shirt, tearfully demanding why he couldn't wear things carefully. The guy just shrugged. "Yup, so?" He casually explained he simply couldn't avoid making a mess when he was training. Meanwhile, the little cat demon watched from a distance, probably totally entertained by the drama. But the young woman wasn't done, yelling that didn't mean he could just swap torn shirts for her newly sewn ones. And so someone quietly advised the worried woman, urging her not to let those people take advantage of her kindness. He held out the foul training shirt, asking if she couldn't at least wash it first. She immediately bristled, snapping for him to mind his own business right now. Later, slumped with exhaustion from the endless tasks, a voice remarked on the heavy sigh. He offered a candy, saying the sigh didn't look good, but she retorted she needed deodorant, not sweets. Despite her insistence, she ended up eating the candy anyway, munching away. The young woman, clutching her fabric, sighed, repeating how the prince told her not to follow him anymore. The guy next to her listened, thoughtful. He mused quietly to himself, realizing things had indeed come to this point for her. Sitting there with scissors, she felt like a total screw-up, while someone else thought the prince was keeping her from them. But something else was clearly on his mind, as his expression remained serious. He smiled slightly, deciding the prince, being so clumsy, probably didn't even explain why to the poor girl. Oliver reflects that for the royal family's second prince to give that kind of order means he actually cares about this maid. Looking at the piles of laundry, Oliver muses that all he sees is just a weird girl and all these unnecessary things, making the prince's curiosity intriguing. The maid glares fiercely, telling the smiling knight that she can totally hear him, despite his attempt at subtle mockery. Rustling his shirt, the guy thinks that despite everything, she's probably a pretty brave girl to deal with this chaos. Well, he mused, maybe he should just go see for himself what's really going on with the girl. Fist flies fast. Maid caught off guard. Guy turns, asks why. His hand was bleeding, crimson drops staining his fingers after the sudden contact. He explained the blood wasn't from hitting her, but a random cat scratched him trying to throw something at her head. That scratch. Could it be Glenn? The annoying cat demon kid just tried to attack her? Shaken, the maid immediately kneels, insisting on treating his wound and telling the poor guy to give her his hand right now. But he looked away, muttering he didn't need treatment, claiming it was just a scratch anyway. Like, whatever. Still confused, the worried woman then asked what kind of cloth he was even trying to throw at her when the weird cat attacked. He awkwardly produced the item, looking down at the fabric and asking if this was the weird cloth she meant. The young woman looks utterly bewildered, wondering what on earth is happening now. The knight clutched his chest, looking totally shocked and maybe in pain from the sudden hit. Holding her spoon, the young woman just stares blankly, utterly baffled by what just happened. The panicked woman rushed over, asking frantically if he was okay as the knight collapsed to the ground. The young woman let out a nervous laugh, thinking, "Serves you right?" before gasping in surprise at something else. The annoying cat demon smugly confessed he just gave the knight a tiny little scratch. Someone totally panicked, asking what he'd done. The stressed woman retorted, "Was he sure it was just a little scratch?" Oh right, demon wounds are seriously bad news for humans. Her eyes widened further, thinking about protection from the goddess. Apparently, it was especially bad for humans without much divine protection. Well, the smug little demon mused. His lord was totally religious, but this poor guy. The demon's voice continued. Well, the goddess's hero hadn't shown up in almost 1,000 years anyway. The smug demon figured it was no shock humans were ditching their goddess. Seeing the guy's bad reaction to the scratch, the creature observed he had barely any protection from the goddess. The maid just stared, totally confused by that assessment. The small feline confirmed the knight was affected by demon curse, though he seemed surprisingly weak against it. A dark, terrifying mark spread across the man's arm, a silent scream of pain. Panicked, the worried woman knew a normal doctor couldn't fix this awful curse and wondered desperately what on earth to do now. Perhaps calling Sir Maynard could help, the distressed maid suddenly thought, a flicker of desperate hope in her eyes. But the annoying creature adds with a smirk, reminding her that old guy is a demon too, asking if she forgot. Clutching himself, the injured knight asks what they should do, noting calling a demon seems like a great way to make things worse. But the worried woman snaps back at the creature, demanding how they should heal him, while the cat demon casually suggests they just ditch the guy in an alley. To cure this, the tiny demon states calmly, they absolutely need a priest with serious power. The worried woman clutches her head in utter distress, stammering about needing a priest. Of all things, everything just felt so heavy and overwhelming, a total ugh moment. Just as she thought of the priest at the sanctuary, a strange hand suddenly grabbed the young woman. The annoying cat demon smirked, telling her she should just leave the rude man alone. But of course she couldn't, and fell. The worried woman held the injured knight, stressing how scary being corrupted by a curse was, and fearing he might die if he couldn't handle it. The annoying cat demon just looked slightly surprised, commenting simply that yes, he supposed that would be the case. The worried woman stared back, utterly dumbfounded by whatever this guy just said. Just to be clear, Glenn genuinely couldn't care less if the knight lived or died. The injured man looking down couldn't believe it. Did the creature really want to dump a dying person somewhere unknown? The poor guy just couldn't comprehend why anyone could say such a horrible thing so casually. The little demon cat eyed her, looking thoroughly annoyed by everything happening right now. Sitting smugly nearby, the tiny creature watched as the young woman collapsed, utterly overwhelmed by the situation. But then a strange light flared from the stressed human's hand, revealing an odd symbol as she clutched the ground. This sudden burst of power infuriated the feline being, making him shriek in frustration as energy radiated outwards. The worried maid could only manage a confused whisper, completely baffled by the bizarre events unfolding around her. The worried woman reached out, a strange glowing symbol appearing on her hand, shocking the injured knight. He stared, utterly baffled, yelling out the annoying cat demon's name in sheer panic. The strange seal on the maid's hand glowed fiercely as the knight realized something about her. She looked furious and annoyed while he just watched her, still clutching his injury. The tiny cat demon shrieked, absolutely horrified, yelling at his elder sister to stop using her holy power right now. The holy power burns the knight, causing him to cry out in pain as the strange mark spreads. Standing tall, the annoyed creature declares she's a piece of work, asking if she's the Holy Sword's hero, while the injured man pleads for her to help the curse. Eleanor just stares, utterly stunned by the abrupt reveal and the shocking implications. Meanwhile, the knight, his face pale and sweaty, lets out a quiet gasp in disbelief. Suddenly, the guy tackles the young woman across the room, sending them flying mid-air as a little cat watches the chaos. Knocked off her feet, the woman cried out how incredibly heavy everything felt right now. The annoying cat demon casually remarked that the hero's strange holy power seemed to have vanished. Still sprawled on the ground, groaning about the weight, she heard the creature complain she'd scared him by awakening like that. Deciding the excitement was over, the tiny cat demon started thinking about food, surprised by how hungry being startled made him. Suddenly, a hand shot out and grabbed someone with a shout. "Wait!" She pulls the cat's tail, demanding cure info. The annoyed cat wants to leave first, though, and somehow her holy power is back, apparently. A demon like me doesn't use holy power, okay? Try praying while hugging the knight with both hands, smirked the little demon. The injured knight just lay there, a painful mark spreading across his arm. Hearing the absurd instruction, the poor woman flushed bright red, utterly baffled. Him. Looking down at the fallen guy, she repeated the impossible thought. Her hugging this person? Well, the annoying cat demon just smirked, offering a casual alternative. Just ignore him then. But ignoring him meant he might turn into a demon too. And then, well, the beard man would totally die. The little demon tells the shocked maid about weird demon types like insects and mushrooms. She looks totally grossed out by the thought of the knight turning into one of those things. But then she steels herself, deciding this bizarre plan to save the guy is the only way. She looks down at his injured hand, feeling completely awkward about what she has to do next. Ignoring the weirdness, the worried woman throws herself onto the poor guy, desperately praying to the goddess for healing. Clutching the injured knight, the maid prayed awkwardly, musing his rudeness and fishy smell weren't worth dying for, while he weakly asked if it worked. Her face stressed, the maid begged, wondering if her prayer was even helping this poor guy at all. But his arm, still bearing the dark mark, showed the awful curse wasn't fading away yet. She recoiled in shock, the dark curse absolutely refusing to leave the knight despite her efforts. Pure panic set in. What on earth could she do now if the injured man actually died? Or maybe he'd just turn into a demon looking like this. Begging the goddess, she thought how sad his parents would be if he died. Worse, the cat demon noted he could pitifully become a mushroom from a mere scratch. She couldn't bear imagining his mother's misery and wouldn't tell her that. That maid, she really is something. The little demon sighed, exasperated. That little cat demon, Glenn, peeks around the corner looking totally surprised by something unexpected happening right then. The little cat demon, looking sheepish, says oopsie, walking away from the knight's injured leg after a tiny scratch. Ignoring the awkwardness, she leans over the injured knight, praying to the goddess and wondering what on earth she's doing to him. Her face crumpled, tears welling up as she wondered. Still confused and distraught by the cursed mark not fading. The injured knight looks utterly bewildered, mumbling something about hearing mushroom and goddess from her desperate prayer. The prince stared down at the maid below. She looked up, eyes wide and distressed. A knight might die from a cat scratch? The young man blinked, utterly confused, asking what on earth a cat had to do with anything. Suddenly, tears welled up in her eyes, overwhelmed by this ridiculous, terrifying day. He looks totally confused by her sobbing apology to Prince Blair, muttering something about how her family's cat is a bit short-tempered. Meanwhile, someone focused on the knight's hand, grimly noting they see the wound and wondering if Oliver will actually die just from that. His face still shows confusion as the maid cries, realizing her bizarre words about mushroom and goddess came from her prayer, while she just thinks her prayer totally failed. "Calm down, Eleanor Twain," the young man says sternly to the wailing woman on the ground, while she dramatically laments that she absolutely should not have put the stupid sword back. Looking closer at his arm, another person confirms they indeed don't see any other injuries besides the small wound on the back of his hand. Lying there, the injured man looked peaceful, not in pain, his breathing steady despite everything. But the maid blinked, insisting, No, but... He's not just sleeping, obviously. She cried out, but his arm is getting dark. While the other guy insisted it wasn't dark anymore for him. Suddenly startled, the maid shrieks in surprise as someone nearby lets out a big yawn. The young man's expression was a mix of confusion and thought, murmuring, Maid gasped, stunned as the prince asked her name. Then he grabbed her tightly, laughing, crashing down hard. A sudden jarring impact shook everything right there. They landed with a thud, the young man groaning, noting it hurt. Meanwhile, the real Prince Blair, cloaked and annoyed, spoke to Oliver. Oliver teased the flustered young woman, asking why she was looking at the new girl so aggressively. Just then, Prince Blair arrived, spotting the maid sitting on the knight and demanding she be released at once. Sitting her on his lap, the injured knight slyly asked if she enjoyed his candy and wanted more. A sudden, forceful strike echoed through the air, stopping him cold. Kneeling over the fallen knight, the worried woman frantically asked if he was all right. The injured knight Oliver looks confused, asking what exactly she meant by that reaction. The poor maid looks terrified, begging someone not to make such a scary face and asking what's wrong. The knight wakes up confused, unable to remember falling asleep there. While someone muses she must have been worried he slept, stretched out like that. The maid looks distraught as the knight pulls back his sleeve asking why. And the strange cat demon stares back smugly. Back in the spirit realm, the goddess herself wondered about Bradley's past sickness and questioned if she had been too generous. Oliver seemed to recall her surprising strength somehow. She felt relief the knight was okay, despite her prayer. Then, she stopped dead, realizing what just happened. Holy power erupted from the young woman, making the demon shriek at her to stop showing it off so easily. The tiny creature looked utterly shocked, wondering aloud if that was a lot of power before awkwardly, passing gas. The maid realizes her holy power, not prayer, healed the knight. The legendary blade remains stuck in the tree, making her question everything she thought was over. Despite everything, the stressed maid is still stuck as the goddess's hero, looking utterly bewildered by it. Her shocked eyes confirm it doesn't matter if she holds the sword. The goddess apparently picked her anyway. Apparently, resigning is pointless unless she tells the goddess directly, especially now that her brother is the Demon King. She's totally slumped on his lap, looking overwhelmed, yet he notes how busy she is despite the situation. No way, she thinks miserably. He just stares, a silent pause as he watches her distress. Her hands squeeze tight as he considers giving her a comforting pat on the back. Then, instead of a pat, he grabs her arm firmly, making her react with a surprised, "Huh?" Suddenly he clutches his head, yelling in pain, leaving the poor woman gasping in utter confusion. "Prince Blair, what are you doing? Let's go. Just ignore him. Knight is hurt." "What?" The injured knight clutches his head in pain. Following that bizarre outburst, the young woman was still being held while someone calmly patted the injured knight's head, all while another watched nearby. As he processed the weirdness, the injured man suddenly noted Prince Blair's surprisingly angry expression nearby, utterly confused why he'd look like that. Pulled away by the prince look-alike, the maid tried to grab her sewing stuff, wondering if he was actually jealous. Elsewhere, her kind friend covered his mouth in utter shock, hearing some unbelievable news. Someone important walked with purpose, knowing if that story was true, things were about to get huge. Prince Blair strode through the halls, face serious as he processed the potential impact of whatever he'd learned. Following behind, the maid wondered anxiously if the prince was upset about something, perhaps relating to her earlier mess. The maid looks totally shocked, reaching out as she realizes, "Prince Blair, don't tell me." And she wonders introspectively why on earth she's acting this way. But she knows deep down she messes things up way more than anyone else. What on earth is she even doing now? She's totally stressed out. Whenever she thinks about working, she hears her late father's voice, reminding her that daughters of noble families shouldn't do servants' work. Her father wanted her to be the heir, not her sickly brother, telling her she had something else important she absolutely must do. But thinking back on his words like that always made the poor maid mess up, like the broken mess lying on the floor right then. It was a pattern. Dwelling on his expectations meant stopping work and completely failing at whatever task she was doing. Despite all the insanity, the young woman felt being a maid was actually worth doing, telling herself she just needed to focus on making ends meet. But nope, she told herself fiercely. Now absolutely was not the time to feel depressed about anything at all. The young woman knew she had to figure out why Prince Blair was suddenly so mad at her. But that's just because the poor knight was seriously about to turn into a mushroom there. Seriously, the poor knight was about to become a mushroom. But did the prince think she was just goofing off? Her face twisted with sheer panic, utterly overwhelmed by it all. In front of the prince, Oh no, she suddenly realized something terrible. Prince Blair looks at the young woman's frozen face, asking what's wrong with her. All the poor maid can think about is how she looked sitting on a guy and hugging him. Then the knight lets out a startled yell nearby, making the prince look totally confused. Oh no. Dropping everything, the worried woman shrieks, absolutely freaking out right now. Staring at her wild reaction, the young man demands to know what on earth she's doing. Huddled over, the distressed young woman knew Prince Blair was totally furious, struggling to find the words to explain herself. To the prince, the poor woman frantically pleaded that she totally didn't mean to pounce on that guy while he was sleeping, insisting it was the absolute truth. The young woman could only stare back, her eyes wide and tense, maybe giving a quick, worried glance around. Meanwhile, the young man just looked away, his expression unreadable after her frantic pleading. The young woman shrieked, begging him not to make that face like he totally didn't believe her, while the prince simply stated he didn't understand at all. The knight ponders himself, wondering about something unexpected. Sir Oliver is... what exactly? She rants internally. He just dumped sweaty clothes, stuffed candy in her mouth, and somehow still tackled her tough body like that? No way her needlefish skinny arms could possibly do that, she protested dramatically to the prince. Her hands weren't just needlefish thin. Her intense grip showed she was serious, despite her ridiculous excuses. Attacking someone at work is unheard of, he mused. His parents raised him strictly. Wait, needlefish? What was that even about? He reflected on her evil acts, remembering her words. He recalled her needlefish excuse. She looked surprised. A blank moment passed. When was that? She thought. She wondered when she could have possibly said that weird needlefish thing in front of him. The realization hit her like a truck. She had said that exact stupid thing to his face before. The maid sat there, totally mortified, realizing she was the one who had said that ridiculous thing earlier when she pulled the sword. Yeah, she only said it back then to totally throw him off because she was freaking out about yanking out the holy sword. Seriously, the young woman had flailed around, insisting he look at her tiny, needlefish-like slender arm, as if that proved she couldn't pull a sword. Suddenly, an annoyed voice cut through the air. "Didn't you do it properly?" Someone somewhere demanded, questioning the memory wipe's success. And just like that, the worried woman panicked, realizing if Prince Blair did remember that specific stupid comment, that meant Sir Maynard's memory wipe failed spectacularly. My, is someone catching a cold? A quiet question hangs in the air near a window. The prince-like figure looks perplexed, while the other, hiding their face, insists they are completely mistaken. Sweating and panicked, the young woman internally screams her arms aren't skinny, certainly not needlefish ones, denying the whole thing. Huh? The young man internally scoffs. What's with that obvious, totally forced lie about being a novice or something? Utterly panicked and sweating buckets, the maid screams to His Highness that it must have been someone else. She only just started serving him a few days ago. Her face totally panicked, The young woman shrieked about physical assertion, while he awkward denied remembering anything, busted by his own expression. Turning slightly, the young man looked thoughtful, a quiet "oh" escaping him, clearly processing her bizarre reaction. Looks like Sir Maynard's spell wasn't broken yet, she smugly realized. He just looked utterly doubtful about remembering that specific part. You, the guy thought, a faint smirk playing on his lips, seeing a way to actually get away with something here. Eek! The poor woman freaked out. Shocked, he remembered her saying she wished she hadn't put the stupid sword back. The worried woman insisted she didn't say that, while the prince-like figure pointed out employees shouldn't have swords inside anyway. He asked what she meant by that, and she looked completely flustered by his question. A tense silence hung between them, as the young woman finally looked up at him again. Then the disguised creature leaned in, declaring he didn't think there was a more obvious lie, calling her you. The annoyed guy then looked away, muttering quietly that it wasn't actually him. Sweets vanished. Only you were here, they asked. Cat snuck in? The young man sweating suggests. Not me either, the worried maid deflects. Klaus, smiling faintly with an arm around his friend, warns someone else nearby to stop putting the young man on the spot like that. Leaning in, he points and reveals the blushing friend has cream on his face, exposing his sweet-eating secret. He flustered, shouting it wasn't cream at all, but a darn beard suddenly sprouted on his face. That must be... It's totally because he's just in his awkward growth spurt phase now, obviously. Nearby, Klaus laughed, telling a maid to bring more sweets while the prince and his friend relaxed, ignoring the absurd excuse. Thinking back, the prince reflected. That feeling was something he shared with Klaus back then, who is now totally against him. Huh? The young woman asked, utterly confused, wondering what on earth the guy was talking about being much worse than a lie she made. The worried woman just stared back, her expression utterly bewildered by what was happening right then. Meanwhile, the real Prince Blair looked utterly radiant, beaming and laughing, clutching his stomach with amusement. "Ooh, what?" the poor woman shrieked, completely and utterly shocked by something she just heard or saw. He always seemed so composed, thought the maid, watching the real Prince Blair walk past, effortlessly cool, while other maids whispered excitedly, "Prince Blair is laughing so hard he's holding his stomach." The mortified maid couldn't believe she was sitting on him like this while he found it hilarious. The real Prince Blair walks past bowing staff, his notoriously stern expression making the ladies tremble, leaving the maid wondering why they were apologizing so much. Meanwhile, this guy, looking exactly like him, is totally giving off some weirdly charming, sparkly smile that seems way too sweet to be the actual prince. Seeing that look, the young woman feels her heart suddenly pound like crazy, completely caught off guard by the contrast. Her hand automatically clutches her uniform. The embarrassed student unsure how to react to whatever weirdness is happening now. He leans in closer, touching his lip, radiating pure charisma. And the poor woman thinks, "Oh my God, what do I do?" His smile is ridiculously charming. Her heart went absolutely wild, beating so hard it actually hurt her chest. And she was pretty sure her face was turning beet red, feeling like it was burning up. Wide-eyed and flushed, she couldn't believe how intensely she was reacting to him. After that chaotic moment, Prince Blair told her she didn't have to report to the training ground anymore. A quiet moment settled, the strange encounter and the unexpected news hanging heavy in the air. The cloaked figure stood before the palace maid, who touched her cheek, looking flustered as he spoke. An unsettling darkness swirled nearby, thick with an ominous energy that felt truly wrong. A startled cry escaped her lips as she flinched back, clearly reacting to something unexpected. Carrying a ridiculously large bundle, Eleanor paused, hearing her name called out. Another maid approached, looking concerned, asking the worried woman if she could stay late because someone was sick. It was Ms. Serena who called her name, apologizing and looking quite ill. Another maid explained the night shift was vacant because someone supposed to cover didn't show. She was told they were short-staffed since the royal ball was just around the corner. The worried maid then asked Eleanor if she could please help out tonight despite her brother. Suddenly, the annoying cat demon was spotted peering cheekily through a nearby window. That annoying cat demon peered through the window, giving a cheeky wink from outside. Following the wink, another maid totally appreciated being informed, but asked why he was winking like that. The other maid's relief was palpable, declaring she owed Eleanor for taking the shift, looking genuinely grateful. But her relief was short-lived, shocked by the request to stay close to Prince Blair on Ms. Serena's behalf that evening. "Ah," escaped her lips. Forced to agree, the young woman managed an awkward, slightly pained smile, meekly saying she'd do it. "Sure." The young woman blinked, realizing with dread that Miss Serena was normally the one in charge of Prince Blair's room duties. And honestly, ever since seeing his smile, she got strangely shy and couldn't even look the guy in the eye anymore. She wrung her hands, fretting, because fortunately, she used to not have any job requiring her to work close to the prince, so that hadn't been a problem. What should she even do now? Facing the night's duties with pure anxiety, the maid wondered if she would actually be okay.